Mm-mm.
Need my glasses.
Is that an Akira jacket? Is that what I just saw?
Could be. Could be.
Let me see. What was that stream? I remember you dropped it earlier.
What is good, everyone? Fanatic should be back any second, and yeah, we'll get this thing popping. Took me 3 weeks to get this going.
Okay. All right. I think I'm ready finally.
Excellent. You hearing us? So is
Can
that
I get a link to your stream, by the way?
Oh, I sent it to you in DMs.
Dope.
Yeah, it's the Lethy Water Kai Twitch, and it's also the same on YouTube.
How many people? Are we waiting on anybody?
We're waiting on one more, possibly two, but no guarantee on the two.
Gotcha. How do I? Oh my god, I'm never on Twitch, unfortunately. How do I? Here it is. Oh,
Let's see. There's Fanatic. So we should be good now. Oh, you got a whole soundboard set up. Excellent. Good to see you, Fanatic.
Celebrity in the house.
That was
Slayer.
Man, that was frustrating. I could not get this camera to work to save my life. We got it now. I'm so sorry, bro. I tried to come early, but I just ran into technical issues that I'm not used to. That was crazy.
StreamYard making lives miserable. Now we go back to
basics legit.
And ain't ready.
100%. This is the way it should have been from the beginning. I don't know why we all switched to StreamYard.
Because
then you can move around the bubbles and all that.
Ads are done.
You can't do that in Discord?
Should be. No, not that I know of.
That's why. Okay.
But
at least there's a reason for it.
And then like being able to have everybody's names at the bottom the entire time. Well, all I have to do is flash over the Discord and it'll show everybody's name. It's not that big a deal.
Right.
But
yeah.
For the sound problems and everything else that comes along with it, yeah. All right. So is everybody good to go?
For the most part, yeah.
Excellent. Welcome to the Minds of the Ecclesia panel. I am your host, Lethy Water Kai. And with me, I have some new faces, some faces you've seen before, and I'm going to let everybody get an introduction, starting with Mr. Fanatic.
Hey, what's good, y'all? Y'all know what it is. I'm always here to try to support my boy Lethy. I like conversations, but I like intelligence. And very, very rarely do you find the combination of those two things. I'm hoping we'll find that here. We'll be able to have a decent conversation. I expect us to, because I have respect for most of the people here. So it should be really, really good.
Excellent. And with us for the first time, Higher Thinking is M87.
Hey, nice to meet you all. Go by Higher Thinking. Very much so appreciate this opportunity to chat with you guys about this very important topic. But yeah, I'm Higher Thinking of the Chicago Black Delegation Podcast. The Chicago Black Delegation Podcast on YouTube is a show dedicated to the reshaping and reclaiming of Black culture in America. And I mean, I don't know. It's my first time here, and I'm very excited to see what we kind of uncover.
Glad you can make it. And with us today, Joe Lewis in an excellent shirt. Look at that.
Thanks, I suppose. Yeah, I'm Joe. I guess if you like what you hear, you can follow my stuff. It's the same tag. Just JOOELEWIS. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. And with us, Mid-Tier Josh, who I just met last week. Thanks for coming through.
Yeah, because it's only been a week, man. But yeah, it was good being there. Yeah, Mid-Tier Josh. Follow me on Instagram right now. I'm still getting all my other channels off the ground. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty passionate about this topic, so I'm down to talk about it for sure.
All right. So, starting with why Black students are still disciplined at higher rates, takeaways from AP's report. What do the takeaways from this study mean for the outcomes of Black students and their future progress? Racial differences in how schools discipline students received new attention 10 years ago during a national reckoning with racial injustice. A decade later, change has been slow to materialize. In many schools around the country, Black students have been more likely to receive punishments that remove them from the classroom, including suspensions, expulsions, and being transferred to alternative schools. Those differences became the target of a newly energized reform movement, spurred by the same reckoning that gave rise to the Black Lives Matter movement. For many advocates, students, and educators pursuing racial justice meant addressing disparate outcomes for Black youth that begin in the classroom, often through harsh discipline and investment in low-income schools. The movement elevated the concept of the school-to-prison pipeline, the notion that being kicked out of school or dropping out increases the chance of arrest and imprisonment years later. So how do we feel about this? Starting with Fanatic.
I mean, look, we know what it is. I mean, there's always been like this persistent kind of perception that Black children are worse. I experienced it myself in school. I hate public education with a passion. But also, I think there are probably some things at home that could probably contribute to this. I mean, I think the notion that, yeah, there's less likely, um, you know, parents that are more able to be involved. It's not that Black people have worse attitudes about education or anything like that. It's more about the fact that, you know, you have to work. Parents have to work. There's a lot more single parenthood, and so those kinds of things start impacting children's ability or the parents' ability to like enforce things and discipline and things like that. But also, yeah, racism of the teachers, and people just tend to view the same behavior from Black kids as threatening, as opposed to white kids.
Thank you for that. Higher thinking.
Yeah, so I spoke to a few people about this matter. One, I mean, all anecdotes is coming primarily from Chicago public schools and stuff like that, which is which definitely has made a name for itself at this point. Um, so it's like a student of Chicago public schools, a teacher, and an assistant principal that out of he's not from Chicago, but it's a lot of the same things. A lot of the same things you kind of see from Chicago Black schools throughout the country. But so most anecdotes are coming from like people that whom attended Black centered schools and stuff like that. So, but pretty much everybody is collectively agreeing that it's a systemic issue. It's a situation that primarily stems from like lack of funding. Um, I would say situations where teachers are primary have a put a strong emphasis on their I believe it's called the teacher rating system, this record book that records every teacher's ability to teach their students like that, and all their how their curriculum works for each individual student. Like these teachers like really focus in on making sure that is spot clean and like as good as it could possibly be. Unfortunately, that means that they will prioritize going to more successful schools, leaving the underfunded schools behind. You know what I'm saying? And guess who those underfunded schools are? Primarily whose primary demographic belongs to is us. So, I mean, needless to say, a lot of this is just comes from like folks trying to leave Black folks behind. Um, in this case, educationally.
Thank you. Joe, what do you think about this?
Yeah, once again, thanks for having me. To kind of keep it simple, the problems that exist amongst Black Americans are not going to change until society kind of recognizes Black Americans as people. There's a bunch of problems that originate outside of the school, and those problems that exist outside of the school are going to get exacerbated when they get in there. So it's going to be a persistent problem of disciplinary for as long as you don't address educational segregation, economic inequality, the anti-Black bias that exists in curriculum and testing, the economic exploitation that exists and is pervasive among Black families and the like. And make no mistake, the education system is not designed to teach Black kids, but it's not in this like aggressive, pervasive way that racism used to be. Racism used to be, well, we just won't take your kids there. We'll fight to make sure they don't enter in here. But now it kind of morphed into this idea that's baked within the institution that requires certain groups of kids, and a lot of times it ends up being non-white kids who being otherized within the institution, because the institution has no desire in recognizing the situations that exist externally that might influence internally and stuff like that. And then Black Americans, by and large, are really easy targets for political reasons and otherwise to the problems of democratic leadership, democratic governance, when in reality, Democrats have no desire to change these institutions anyway, but it just makes an easy political target. So they do things like imply that there's like an inherent behavioral difference between Black kids and white kids. There's cultural deficiency, cultural pathologies, soft discipline to Black students when they finally get into schools. And then there's like racial mismatch. And some of those have good arguments in support of why they should exist. Like, I think there needs to be an effort of hiring more Black teachers, for one. But then what happens on top of that is the educational makeup is really, really interesting, to say the least. Like, I live in New Jersey, right? And we are one of the most segregated schools cohorts in the entire country. And like, I'll leave this as like my ender. Like, what does it mean when I say, not even what does it mean, I'll just like say the fact of the schools that are majority Black, that are over 80% Black, they are all charter schools. I'm gonna say that again. Of the majority Black schools, schools that have an 80% or greater cohort of Black people are all charter schools. Not a single public school exists within that. But for white Americans, as an example, schools that have majority white populations, they are majority public school districts. Maybe we can get into that, because that's a funny little stat, but that's all I got for now.
Thank you for that, Joe. Josh, what are your feelings on this?
No, I mean, I think they said a lot of good things already. I think where I usually end up taking this is kind of where I think it was. I'm sorry. It was kind of where higher thinking was taking it earlier, where I believe a lot of this comes down to education, and it just comes down to I would personally, I'd like to take it to where it turns into mental health, just because I know the Black community in general has kind of there's a stigma attached to that already, and a lot of parents coming from lower income don't generally understand how important that is, because, you know, most of us got spanked. We didn't worry about traumas or anything like that. We weren't worried about that type of shit. You're more worried about survival, getting your money. You don't have time to think about things that would, how can I say, better you in the long term. That's not what you're focused on. And when I look at things like how many counselors we have per student, I think it's, last time I checked, it was 1 to 385. So one counselor for every 385 students is clearly not enough to work on kids and help them out, especially when a kid comes from a broken household. I think Fanatic mentioned that earlier. Or, you know, maybe not both his parents, or maybe their parents are always working, so they can't invest in the kid. So you have these situations where kids who aren't necessarily bad kids don't really have any way to understand themselves. And they go to school and they might act out because that's what, you know, that's the environment you're in currently. And then it turns into disciplinary action. Kids get expelled. Teachers don't know how to deal with them. And honestly, why would a teacher want to deal with them? Because we already understand that education is like not the forefront of American, you know, politics. It's not the thing that we care about. I believe the standard pay for a counselor right now is like $60,000, and it's a 7-year degree. So it's like, why would you see what I'm saying? Like, why would I want to work as a counselor when I went to college for 7 years? I got to pay back my degree. So yeah, we're at a shortage of counselors. These kids just don't have a lot of help. And I know, crazy enough, like I know, I think it was Joe. He said he was from Jersey. I was from Jersey too initially. I was from Newark, but I moved over. We were moving because the public school system, my parents say, it just sucks, right? So they moved me down to Texas, and it was still kind of like I was a kid, right? So I was making a bunch of bad mistakes, doing a bunch of stupid shit. But ultimately, it was strange because that when they did send me to the counselor, I saw the counselor twice through the 4 years I was there. Like I would get in trouble. Someone would be like, "Hey, go talk to the counselor. Like they got it set up for you." So I go in there, talk to the counselor for 15 minutes, and she'd be like, "Hey, if you want to talk about something else, we can talk about that." And then she'd send me on my way, and I'd never see her again for the next year or so. Nothing was really solved. I was still gonna be me. And I feel like a lot of kids could probably echo that same sentiment. Like they don't even understand that they have problems, right? So I kind of think it starts there with investing in education. So
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open up the conversation.
My main thing is I kind of I struggle with the idea of focusing on the children and the problems that they present, specifically because I'm well aware of how frequently the teachers and the like are just racist towards black kids, just from my own experience, and I feel like yes, there's not without a doubt going to be there's going to be there's going to be situations where children are acting up, etc. But I think that the I think you should obviously always fix the systemic issues because I think they impact more than the individuals, right? And I think there are like adjacent systems that might be causing issues, family structure and all those other things, and they might be issues as well. They're definitely issues as well, but I think the main issue is racism.
Sure. I mean, a problem with that, which I kind of disagree with, and it's a really semantical disagreement. Um, Schools are the first engagement that kids have with a government institution. And this government institution is also a representative of multiple others. Like, for instance, the school alone is children's first engagement with the institution of police, the institution of healthcare, the institution of, in some ways, housing, depending on what district you end up with. And I agree with you that the individualist approach in sort of helping the kids is a little misguided. But I think a better way of framing it is that, like, all of those kids are part of families, and there needs to be an invested interest in helping families. I mean, there's not even a disagreement at all then. Like, we should be over investing in families and to recognize that, hey, if families are emboldened and nurtured, and nurture can be a bunch of different things, then if they are to end up in the public school system, then they'll probably end up a better outcome. But in a lot of cases, people use the public school system to offset the deficiencies that they have in their external life, whether it be healthcare, housing, etc.
Sure, but then wouldn't you also say though that even children who come from stable homes and things like that, black children are still like subjected to more disciplinary action, more likely to be expelled for the same issues. So then it feels like if the focus is to be talking about the impact of the school to prison pipeline and the and detriments caused by our education system, to then shift and start thinking about the other things, it feels like well, that feels unfair. Like, whoa, it almost feels like we're letting someone get away with a whataboutism, right? And I know that's not your intention, obviously, but you
Yeah,
get what I'm saying.
yeah. Well, we gotta first be because something I'm slowly on this new kick on is being honest to issues, so people can have a better job at understanding it. Like the first thing right out the gate is that vast majority of kids are not getting suspended from school, they're not getting expelled from school, and they don't have to face the disciplinary systems in American education. That's just factually correct. The problem is when you do engage in those systems, when you end up being subjected to those disciplinary systems, then that's when you start seeing disparities. One thing that I think Democrats, because let's just be honest, a lot of Democrats are leading school boards in America, what they kind of get wrong is the idea that all black kids need saving, when in reality there's a very particular set of conditions that are existing that are leading black kids to be disproportionately represented in this aspect of education. Depending on the state that you're in, it tends to anywhere float from 2 to 3 times more likely. But that 2 to 3 times more likely doesn't mean that there's like a swath of black kids that are getting disciplinary just because of how the proportions are when it comes to the cohorts. Like you can have 3 black kids suspended in your school, and if your school only has 3 black kids, then you're gonna see a disparity there, you know?
Right. But if we see that, if you only have 3 black kids and the black kids are the only one that get whatever, then I think that speaks to the issue.
Sure.
And I think shifting the conversation to what was their family structure when we know that there is a systemic structure feels like almost like a game of hide the stick. We're letting them get away with the systemic issue to try to victim blame. And I know that's not your intention, but that's what ends up happening if we, instead of focusing on the systems and the people in power that are directly impacting these things, if instead of focusing on that, we then shift to, again, somewhat adjacent issues that are like going to be experienced by the people, their family structure, economic standing, housing situations, food shortages, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of these are broad issues that absolutely might have indirect impact on this issue. But the direct thing when we're talking about schools, discriminatory practices that are impacting children would be to talk about that school's independent whatever, right? And I'm not making a statement that all black kids need to be saved or anything like that. I would never say something so ludicrous, you know.
No.
But I do think that there should be a very specific focus on the subject at hand.
Yeah, I mean that was even something that and I'm gonna keep space for other people to speak. Like that was the one frustration that I had with the Trump administration with Betsy DeVos, because they kind of, again, like I want to make something clear, Department of Education federally cannot determine these type of practices. They can only give guidance, and then it's up to the schools to implement said guidance. So you're not going to see a sweeping reform of how kids are interpreted in the education system that's at the hands of the federal government. That being said, it was really nefarious for her to make the argument that there's some level of infringement. She basically kind of passively suggested in the disciplinary report that she did, it was just a little chapter, that we shouldn't keep track of disciplinary data and racial data of those disciplinary records. It was a really bizarre argument. And to paraphrase it a little bit, it was essentially like, by keeping track of disciplinary records to track things like race and gender of the teacher, race and gender of the student, that's actually going against a what you literally said, like a color blind or race neutral approach to disciplinary problems. And it's again like the really pervasive thing that Republicans like to do, to not care about race ever. And then when it's like, okay, we got time to solve the problem, then it's like, well, there's a disparity here. It's like, oh, well, it's not about the fact that we have teachers that don't have they don't have the training to educate kids properly, and black kids are feeling the brunt end of that. It's something else. It's like a really weird whack-a-mole in their argumentation. So that really pissed me off, because the first thing that we have to do is have good data. And if we look at, for instance, if we say like a school had 3 black kids, we use a 3 black kids example here to stay consistent. If a school has 3 black kids and all 3 of those black kids get suspended, but then when you look at the disciplinary records, you see that, okay, this was something that had to do with them, we'll say fighting, because in most schools they have some type of fighting policy where even if you are the victim of violence, you will still get suspended or removed from the educational environment for X amount of days. That's just protocol in a lot of schools, but still counts as a suspension. So if you find that, like, oh, all 3 of these black kids were involved in fights and they were victims of said fights and they're removed from school, is there a systemic issue with fighting, like a systemic issue where these kids are like having disciplinary problems, or is this a reflection of a poor policy?
We started making it together after that.
Sure. I
Where
mean,
he staying? Harvard.
yeah. I mean, I guess
Local
yeah. The
house.
hypotheticals are there. We can
Second
try to
floor.
figure that out.
Right on the couch.
I'm just aware that, like, very often disproportionately, like I said, we can point to different things where if children do the exact same thing, that they view it differently. I was just
Yes.
recently watching this one video with this woman. I can't remember her name. I'm terrible with it. I think M87 saw it also, where she was like kind of describing that when a little white kid is like cheeky or
Yeah.
Snappy or whatever, then at that point, then they'll say, "Oh wow, he's really sharp," and they almost like praise him for it. But if a black kid does it, it's like, "Oh, he's, he questions authority. He's et cetera, et cetera." So I think that's a thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
the,
it's
the
the
No,
way
for
that
system
we
sure.
is very
when
much
we
like that.
interpret black people. Like there's a pervasive thing where black people, especially black boys, are perceived as a disruption force when they are in the classroom.
Mhm.
This is also true for black girls. And there's a bunch of like studies that point to like trying to figure out the reasons for that, so why that happens. But a lot of it kind of points to the exact same thing, that these teachers don't have training, they don't have any
Culture.
type of education about how to navigate a diverse educational environment of students. So like they'll have all the education of like broad how to engage with diverse environments in your workplace, diverse environments of your teachers. But then when it finally comes to students, it starts getting very up. The families are families. We ought to not investigate how families do things, but then like we are like teachers end up being the brunt end of that lack of education, because like if you don't educate that, hey, students have different ways of expressing themselves, and just because the way they express themselves in this way does not mean that they're criminal, does not mean that they're delinquent, does not mean that they are disruptive, and you have a very limited perspective on what you think disruption is. You might as a teacher think that, oh, one kid screaming across the hallway or yelling across the hallway to get attention of another student is something that's worthy of disciplinary action, which again, like I've seen as a teacher happen multiple times, and it's almost disproportionately black students that get that. Like there's a way that a black student speaks that you like, I see like white folks heads go up like, huh? And I'm just like, yeah, it's not that serious. It's just like,
Yo, if I can,
yeah.
oh, someone's about to say something.
Go ahead, Josh.
I was just gonna say, I was just gonna piggyback off of that very briefly. I just remember seeing a video that was like quite true, actually. Just again, it's just the kind of the culture of things. Black folks have a tendency to speak with their hands and doing that really. I mean, especially like depending on where you are. Like New York has their own way of doing it. Chicagoans have their own way of doing it, and it's maybe even Atlanta. But either we talk with our hands, we may speak a little bit more loudly, maybe more what they would consider to be more aggressively at times, and then
Mhm.
if it doesn't lead to a disciplinary action, it leads to it initially kicks off like a heightened sense of like I don't know, a sensitivity, like, oh, it's something about to pop off. I mean, let me keep an eye on these kids. They are black. I know about these stereotypes and stuff like that. Let me be mindful of like these kids and make sure they don't. Oh, what are you doing? You know what I mean? It just leads to like a heightened sense of like what are they up to and whatnot.
You're speaking to the this is how I talk loop,
Oh, you saw
where
that? Okay.
or not
God,
that. No,
I know
I'm
that
just
gentleman's
saying it
name, but
like
yeah.
broadly, where it's like
So
you'll say something like I'll just say a police officer, because to make it a little bit charged here, they'll tell you calm down, and then you're like, this is just how I talk, and it's like, no, but sir, so please calm, and then it's just escalating the situation
for no reason.
within
Right.
a mundane situation.
Hmm.
No, I was gonna
Ultimately,
say. Oh, go
go
ahead. Go
ahead.
ahead.
You got it. You got it.
No, I'm about to say like a lot of these things. I feel like this racism that we're talking about in the schools and things like that. I think it proliferates into like the macro of society. So when we look at like he was just about to talk about police and things like that, it's the same thing. I think the disciplinary there's a different person disciplining you, but it's the same exact concept where you have a black person like Fanatic was saying. It's like it's the same. You might exhibit the same behavior as someone beside you, but because you're black and the way America currently views black people because of media, because of a lot of different reasons, because of the actual situations we are currently put in a lot of times, it's just looked at with a negative light. And you're going to get that in schools. You're going to like, there's no point in dealing with these kids, right? Especially, I think it was Joe that said this earlier, where it's like you need kind of like representation. You need teachers who are going to be black, who will look at those kids with some kind of empathy and understand them. Because if you don't, you have the situation where you have white people policing black neighborhoods and all of them are criminals to them, right? The view is like they're all doing something because you don't have anything to reference it to. Whereas if we'll say, and if any of y'all went into a black neighborhood and you were a cop, you would kind of understand what everyone's doing. You understand that cookout's not a problem. You understand like they're just hanging out. But if you're a white person, you see a lot of ruckus going on or some shit. Like this looks a little different. and you're
And
trained.
sometimes
Oh,
that
go ahead.
ruckus is justified too. Like there are certain situations that even in a culturally specific ruckus, that ruckus can still be disruptive.
Right.
When I say disruptive in a way that's just like, God damn these niggas. Like, but it's not like a level of like, oh, I'm gonna call the police and then like rain down the state upon them. Sometimes it's just a symbol of just like, hey man, I got work in the morning. Y'all are clearly bumping, but can you like turn it down a little bit? Great, have a good
Yeah.
one.
But it's like looking at it beyond that. It's like looking at them
Yeah.
as if they're different than you, right? Because here's the
Mhm.
thing: we've seen this happen many a times, like on the macro level. So we'll take that. Remember that that politician who had the kid who was like a swimmer and he got caught like assaulting someone like near a dumpster or something a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And when that happened, it was a white kid, and when that happened, everyone was like, "Oh, but he has such a good future ahead of him." You know, we can't just ruin his life. No one thinks about that with black kids because no one has a black kid in their life to think about as reference. Like they don't even have that empathy. But they do have little sons, and they're like, "Oh, reminds me of my nephew. Oh, he reminds me of me when I was a kid. He reminds me of whatever." And that's why you need black people, generally, I believe, policing these neighborhoods or teaching these kids because they might give a little bit more of a fuck, to be honest. I
There
don't know if I
was
can say
a
that. My bad.
It was
good-
Brock Turner,
there-
by the way, right?
It is
Brock
Brock
Turner.
Turner.
Yeah.
It's crazy because that name has to be remembered, and one person decided to help his name be remembered by putting his picture next to like in a college textbook for rape. She put the picture of Brock Turner as like to be the face of it, and I thought it was a really beautiful thing to do. And the judge specifically said he could be my son. I mean, he could be my grandson, and that's why he let him go. And in the same sense, this is what happens in the schools when they encounter young black kids. They're just like, boys are gonna be boys. I mean, when it's black kids, it's like, gosh, look, they're always like this. Look at their behavior.
Mm-hmm.
But then whenever it's young white kids, it'll be like, but I mean, honestly, like he just had it hard. I mean, even we look at this with the school shooter phenomenon, right? Where, like, dude, there's all of these studies that are talking about there was a panel that I went on where we were talking about like school shooters and their impact, and one of the people was saying like, you have to look at the upbringing and all of these other things of these people. And part of it, they were talking about, okay, so like they were saying that all of them came from like, really adverse situations. And so we started, okay, well, what are those adverse situations? And it was like, oh, well, for this guy who shot up this school, his dad was an alcoholic. And it was like, oh, so he had two parents in the home? And it's like, yeah. Was his dad just not working? And it's like, oh, no, he was working. They were like living in a middle-class suburb. It's like, oh, so they're living in a middle-class suburb and he had an alcoholic dad, and now we're using that as an excuse to justify him shooting up a school. Now, if a black person is in the infinitely worse situation, we're not even entertaining the notion of any of the underpinning things that are leading towards its conclusion. It's only with white people we'll start considering, wait a minute, and I think this is the same thing in school when it comes to disciplinary action. I say, sure, you probably shouldn't be fighting at school. I can't tell you how many times white kids will fight at school, and then they'll sit there and be like, okay, well, what happened? If it's a white and a black kid, they'll ask the white kid, well, what happened? And then they'll immediately try to constrain the black kid. I got suspended in school for fighting somebody, and I wasn't trying to fight the person. They were fighting me. All I did was push them off of me, and they were like, yeah, you're fighting. Had I been a white kid, they would have let me go.
Something that you brought up, which is interesting. Listen, like Fanatic and I talked about this in private, and like my girlfriend's a feminist, so we get into some back and forth from time to time. And something that she said that really permeated with me is that like girls get bullied in schools all the time. Girls have adverse home situations, whether it be abusive parents, abusive relatives, abusive family members, but you never see a girl blasting up a school. Like you never see, there's never like, oh, this one girl went in, bought a gun illegally or took it from the drawer, went in and then blasted up a school. And like something that to tie this into the point that I'm trying to make here is that in America, there is a male school shooter problem. And there's something in the socialization of men that makes them into school shooters. But then when you pin it down and disaggregate it one level further, there's one demographic of men that do these shootings. And then the minute you go, listen, there seems to be something in white parenting that creates school shooters, we ought to interrogate how within the family dynamic that's creating that. all of a sudden that's a bridge too far. Like, how dare you
Can I-
like be so racially divisive?
Can I slide in here?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, man. No, I actually do a lot of research. A lot of my other friends are really into psych, and that's kind of like my general field I like to enjoy. But it's like actually that would kind of tie into male loneliness, which is a thing that happens. It's actually a big problem right now. It's part of the reason OnlyFans is so big right now, because they will respond to your messages, and a lot of guys are out here and they don't have a lot of things going for them in their personal lives. They go to work maybe, and they go back home and they're alone. They don't have any friends on Discord. Maybe they're a little awkward, whatever it might be. But to your point, with white men, I feel like a lot of times, just like I was talking about the cookouts and things with black families, even my own dad, where he was working all the time, there was never a point in my life where I didn't think my dad actually loved me. Right. And with white parents, it seems to be, I wish I had the actual shit in front of me, but it seems to be that they are a little bit more, especially in the middle class. And I don't know how about the upper class, but I remember the middle class seemed to be a little bit more neglectful of like they're taking care of their kids themselves. And then you have this situation where a lot of kids just fall through the cracks and they kind of, I'm not saying this is an excuse for shooting up a fucking school, but it's like you're just unheard long enough to where you do things like that seem like acting out, essentially.
Yeah, there's a set of conditions that exist. So I make like the big, like much more finer point to it. There's a set of conditions that exists within white households that tends to be in somewhere in the middle class, lower class, that leads young boys to commit harm to themselves and others. And it ought to be something that should be within the invested interest of America to interrogate, investigate, and actually come up with solutions to that. That's why, and like the evidence is there. Like it's just there's overwhelming incidences of white male fuckery, and the minute you go like, hey, you know, if we do the same pathological lines that we do to other groups of people, something's happening in the home socialization, home acculturation, which then is whether it be neglected or what have you, and then that permeates to a point where there's a breaking point. That breaking point could be at the public school level, that breaking point could be when they get married and have children, but something is happening within there.
No, I was about to say, just to keep going, I want to see if maybe y'all can come up with a solution, because I have not personally, outside of like trying to help. But a lot of male aggression comes from the lack of men being allowed to cry when they're younger. Young boys, it's just not socially acceptable, right? And now it's like you might do it on your own, but like crying around your friends is generally not okay. I never did that shit. Like, but girls have been doing that forever, right? So whenever things bother women, they're a lot more in tune with being able to like express themselves. I know it sounds like it. I don't want to be on that feminist tip, but it's like realistically, it is a thing. And men, whenever because they don't, I even know friends now, it's like because they don't express themselves very well as adults, they just kind of keep things to themselves. And when they do finally blow, especially as kids, when you're not understanding of your emotions completely, when you do finally blow, it comes out as aggression. You don't cry about it.
Sure.
You get mad, you get even. In the black community, it usually turns into you shooting other black people that pissed you off. But with white people, because they don't have ops, I guess it just turns into shooting schools. I don't know. I'm making a jump there, but I'm like,
they just have the CIA, the FBI. You know, they get the letter agencies.
Niggas are imagining shit. They ain't going for them, bro. Chill.
I think of like, I mean, when it comes to like black issues, especially black male issues, even a lot of this stuff is like extremely systemic. You know what I'm saying? Like what white folks got going on as far as like the male loneliness, stuff like that. It's a much different. I'd argue that like white male problems is a lot different from black male problems because the system like did something very specific to black people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What's his lady's name? Joy DeGroy, like a psychiatrist, wrote the book Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, and she kind of goes down a line of like untreated trauma from like generations ago and how it like affects us today. You know what I'm saying? How it also affects white folks as well. You know what I'm saying? And but we also got, like I said, I really don't want to like too far lump black male issues in with like white male issues, because like I said, there's a very specific thing. Again, this is a very specific thing that happens to us that can be addressed, which may not solve the problem overnight, obviously, but like I really I kind of cringe a little bit just when I kind of hear like that type of thing come up together.
I'll push back with this idea. Like, there is never going to be a unified idea of what a man is. However,
Okay.
I would argue that whoever has the loudest voice in terms of setting those parameters is going to have a monopoly on what being a man looks like. And then everybody who isn't part of that those parameters tend to be on the short end of the stick. And predominantly, what I found at least, and the way that I argue it, is that Black people are socialized and acculturated to be white people. But then the minute you go into the like cultural norms and expectations of white people, when Black men adopt those things, as an example, we find the contradictions. An example of this I always give is the overly confident white friend when you get pulled over by the police. Where it's like they're the first ones like, it's all right, I got it, I'll talk to him. And it's like, you're not gonna say shit. In fact, you are actually gonna say nothing. You don't exist in the passenger seat. And then it's like, oh, like roll down my window. It's like, hey, officer, how's it going? And then I hear the guy like next to me, this is bullshit. And I'm like, oh my God, here we go. I'm gonna get a ticket. I'm gonna get a ticket. There's nothing I can do about it.
Oh, the ticket is the last thing on my brain.
Yeah, where it's like those things, like there's certain levels of expression that's considered norm for men to have. And in a lot of ways, white men set that rhetorical approach. Like they would say, this is the way that you approach men, this is the way that you approach women, this is the way that you approach institutions. And then the minute you try to do that, you get the contradictions that exist within there. Like there's a way that, sure, there's a way that you should talk to law enforcement, there's a way that you should talk to authority figures, but not every way. The way is not universal. It's just one option of many that could be approached.
Can you give me an example of that? Like, because I want to respond to that, but I feel like I lost.
Oh, sure. Sure. So in the school setting, if you have something, if you believe that you were graded unfairly, what is the social norm that you have from that? Like, what's the expectation that you have? Like, you know definitively that you were graded unfairly. You know definitively that, like, that test was bullshit, but you got the short end of the stick. Where, like, you and your friend did the exact same work. In fact, it might even be identical, but your grade's worse. Like, what's the accepted norm of approach?
Local house.
To me?
Second floor.
Yeah. Right, I guess.
Second, me personally, I'd just be, like, mad, I guess, but I wouldn't really do anything about it.
Sure. What are some other ways that you've seen people approach that problem? I don't know if it cut out halfway.
Let me see. Yeah, I don't know this. I wish you'd answer this one for yourself because I'm drawing a blank. What I guess approach the teacher, would that be the best way?
Yeah. So one way is like approach the teacher. Another way is tell your parents. Another way is complain to the administrator. There's a bunch of different options that exist within there. But one that I would say is the settled norm, one of the settled norms, which again is pretty pervasive in white households, is that if something is done to you unfairly, then it's your responsibility to stand up when something is wrong, especially if it's wrong to you directly. Now, I don't know if you've ever been Black in America and tried to contest a grade as a Black American, but turns out there's some fuckery that exists within that. That could even be something as simple as like the way you, and there's a really good example of this in I want to say it's Atlanta, where a mom is responding to one of the characters like doing some fuck shit in school, and then she just kind of disciplines him in front of the superior, in front of the counselor, of just like, why'd you go on and do that? And then it was just kind of like, depending on how you look at it, aggressive in the moment. Where like the accepted norm is if your kid is bad, you don't do anything to discipline your kid in front of another superior, in front of somebody who is superior in the educational environment, because that could lead to poor outcomes, not only for you, but for the kid itself. And then the episode like expanded upon that, where basically the child got removed from the home because of that action that mother did in context.
You're talking about Atlanta, the fucking
like the show.
I thought you said Atlantis, bro. I was like, what movie was this? All right, my bad. Okay, I feel you. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's just listening to a point where in society there's like a set of rules, such a set of cultural norms, and while they might exist, they might be like present in your everyday navigation. That does not mean that you are able to express yourself within that norm without consequence. Um, which then comes to the whole idea of like, hey, if something is happening to like, God forbid you tell a white kid that the reason why they're doing so bad in school is because they don't have a father at home. Like that's just you don't. That's just not where you go. Like it's like, oh, like this is just some fatherless behavior. Like no, that's not rhetoric that's used against white people to challenge the pathology that they exist in. That is a predominant like tool used against black men and boys in particular. Black girls too, but to a lesser extent.
Okay. I really did want to like drive home this point I was kind of brought up about like I think me and Fanatic also agreed that it's like a systemic thing that's kind of going on. But
Sure.
what I kind of found interesting from the conversations I had with with the teacher and especially the principal was just like the incentivizations of like the teachers specifically. It's
Yes.
like with this um what is this thing called, like this notebook, this record, this teacher record that they are like very very hard on, like which is pretty much let me just go over my notes real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, it these teacher records, they want to keep their scores up to hold their teacher rating. Records
Yes.
testing, it holds their record testing scores, standardized or otherwise, the students pass and fail rates, there, and then note taking on the progress of each student and how the curriculum affects each student's, including the ADHD type variables and so on and
Yeah.
so forth. Um, but also, and with these teachers like really wanting this notebook to, I mean, this record to be like essentially crystal clear, they're actually, I mean, it kind of just makes sense for them to go towards go to schools that's already successful. You know what I'm saying? And
Yes.
whereas since there's all, since we already know that that lack of funding for Chicago or for black schools especially is kind of a driving force as far as how I mean, like old school books and stuff like that. Just a bunch of contributing factors why the students themselves are kind of behind. The teachers are just incentivized to go towards schools that are already doing well. So what is that? So with all the intentional teachers going towards schools that's already doing well, what is that? Where does that leave the black schools? You know what I'm saying? It leaves us with essentially the dregs of teachers, right?
Yeah.
Essentially the again like those that are becoming teachers under these. What I think one of the programs is, I believe it's called Teach for America or something like that. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
college students are who don't really know what to do with their lives are brought in, are like drawn to these different type of programs. There's a better way of explaining that. Again, a lot of this is relatively new to me, but a lot of these students are drawn to these programs that they earn credit hours in these different type of schools, and then
Yep.
but the point is they're not trained to be educators. You know what I'm saying? So oftentimes these they'll either be good. Some of these teachers end up being good at educating, but bad at like maintaining order, or the vice versa. They'll be good
Yep.
at maintaining order, but bad at educating. You know what I'm saying? And then like the whole all type of like areas in between that. You know what I mean?
Or they
So
know
with
how to discipline the way that they were disciplined, but then they don't understand that the way that they're disciplined makes them terrorists in the classroom. So they're just
oh
perpetuating
yeah, I think I know
terrorism.
what you're talking about. As far as
Yeah.
like the maintaining order and stuff like that, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'm just saying like this with this. I mean, again, it makes sense for the teachers to want to go to the best schools because that's where they're gonna get the best paid, and it's no safe and so on and so forth and all that stuff. But I mean, like this is likely where a lot of it kind of starts. You know what I'm saying? With us essentially getting like the worst teachers. You know what I'm saying? They can't educate. I mean, I've heard like I literally heard um a teacher tell me like some students are just passed because they're well behaved, but they're not educated. They're not reading it at like their proper grade level. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Mm.
And like with that, like comes it's gonna build like frustration down the line throughout their throughout their education. And they're gonna lose like their confidence is gonna go down. And that's gonna I mean, how else can we really say they're gonna blow up some way, shape, or form. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of empathy that needs to be applied before we start, criticizing Black Americans and Black American students that are kind of doing less well off than other ethnicities of students. Now, again, this is a systemic thing that needs to be addressed. Not, I mean, obviously there's some things that needs to happen at home, but that needs to be addressed in its own special way as well. That y'all did a pretty good job at explaining as well. But this systemic thing needs to be addressed as well.
Yeah, something that you said that I really deeply agree with is if your educational training does not involve Black students, if it does not involve non-white students, then your educational development is going to be insufficient. Like one of the things that I have a lot of I'm in music education, and I have a lot of colleagues, I have a lot of friends who are looking to go into education, and they say some of the craziest shit on the planet. I love them all. I love them to death, but they say some wild shit. I had a friend in my grade cohort, like in my educational cohort, say that she did not feel comfortable teaching Black kids. And then the teacher kind of guiding the conversation was like, I'm sorry, what? and then and listen, I love if there's one thing I love racial tension in a room full of other white people, because I just get to sit back and shut up. Just let them cook. Because basically in the middle of this conference room, it was like this, basically telling this 22-year-old girl of hey, you have some anti-Black bias here, and you're gonna have to investigate why you don't feel comfortable educating Black kids. Can you articulate why? And then basically it came down to, well, in high school I was bullied by a group of Black kids. That's basically what it was.
Type shit. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's all that was. And then the moderator of the conversation was just yeah, you should probably go and teach some Black kids.
She needs therapy.
Yeah, I don't want her teaching.
That's the gross part. Is a lot of times people do want to say yeah, you should go and do that, but then what ends up happening is then now you're impacting those kids because those kids have that lived experience and believe that oh, now you're doing damage and you're actually harming their psyche and all of this nonsense because, bro, it's disgusting. I think I had too much belief in the idea that teachers were there and too much respect for authority, and so teachers got away with quite a bit of nonsense where they were just nonsense. They had bias. They were just hating in a lot of situations. And I was the only Black kid in a lot of these classes. And yeah, I think if I would have had Black teachers, it would have maybe I wouldn't hate public education to the level that I do.
Possibly. Yeah, to be clear, and the point that I was trying to make here, and the resolution of that situation was that the prescription was for her to teach Black kids. However, the aspect of that I didn't really properly articulate, and that's my bad, was that she needs to be able to see what teaching Black kids looks like within the lens of other teachers who teach Black kids. And that has to be in the forefront long before she's sort of set loose in a room by themselves.
She's going to be shadowing someone essentially.
Yeah. Where it's it's just years of, it could be, hopefully it's just a couple of years, but years of shadowing, years of small moments of okay, you watched me do this thing, you watched me approach this thing in this particular environment. Now you try it, you lead this lesson in this context, and then just constant guidance and one-on-one. Because what a lot of educational systems do, teacher education programs rather, they don't do that. They don't engage with that those type of individuals very often, or they just keep it to themselves. Where it's I'm uncomfortable teaching Black kids.
Most people wouldn't say that.
Yeah,
that's the problem. Yeah, and that's why I was this. While it's a nice fix, what you're suggesting, shadow them and stuff like that, most people would never feel socially capable of saying, "Hey, I feel a little uncomfortable around Black people." Most white people know not to say that. You know what I mean? So it's those teachers are the ones that end up teaching And then we have these issues where black kids are getting expelled at higher rates and everything else 3 times
And
in certain areas.
And not to cut you off, and those are the ones that will always, like, more often than not, I've found that the people who are most uncomfortable with just the thing, like the biases of race, the biases of gender, they're always the first one to be against anti-discrimination training, anti-discrimination professional development, the like just like diversity, actually inclusion, social emotional learning. Those are the ones that come out the loudest, which is always I found so interesting to me. But
Makes sense. And I remember we were talking about this earlier, and I'd like to bring it back around here and see if there's any solution for it. But like I was saying, a lot of times on the macro level, it's the same disciplinary action you see. And we were going to go into that cop video later. But it was like, I had a friend named Marco. He's Bosnian. So it's he's white, but he doesn't look, it's weird. It's a weird thing. But he was going to be a cop. That was his big thing. He wanted to do that since I met him when I was like 16. And I was like, all right, cool, whatever. And he went to Houston for training. And I remember he was going to college at the time, and I was like living in Dallas. And he called me one day, and he was just like, hey, man, I don't know if I'll be able to finish this academy stuff. Or he had finished the academy. He didn't know if he was going to be able to. He didn't know if he wanted to be a cop anymore. And he's been talking about being a cop since we were like kids. So now here we are at 20, I think 23 was the age. And he's like, I don't know if I'll be able to finish. I was like, what's going on? He's told me straight up. He was like, they're telling me shit because he's known me. I've been in his house. I've known his family. He was like, man, they're telling me like right now, whenever you're at a crime scene, the person who most likely did it is the young, built black person. That was like what they coached him on to understand. And he was like, I don't know if I feel that great about doing any of this. And he stuck it out for, I think, a couple months. And then one day he came back to Dallas and he didn't tell nobody why he came back. He's like, he was going through his little depressive mood and stuff. But I mean, that sentiment of like we'll say the wider portion of America believing that we are a certain type of thing. I don't know if there's a way to fix that off the rip. Like, I think that's going to take a lot of years before people just started, just like that teacher where she didn't feel comfortable around black people, or like we were talking with the Brock Turner situation, where they just don't feel comfortable around black people, and media portrays it in a very specific way. We get the same type of roles generally, whether, whatever you're looking at. So it's just like, is there an actual, that's generally why I always go to education, because it's the only thing I can think of that on a micro level that can be changed, where you're looking at like coaching kids through things, having big brother programs, things like that to help kids out. Because otherwise, what are we going to do except for get mad at them for looking at us away when they don't understand otherwise?
I mean, the only thing I can think of is like show them, like treat them like a dog, man. Show them their own shit, bro. When they sit in the corner, show them their own shit. Like show them the history. Show them what the history has done. I mean, I know how they feel about the CRT thing or whatever, but dude, like that's the only way that's the only way they're gonna like get like how bad their treatment of us has affected us even up to this point. I mean, it's kind of obvious in my opinion, but they don't want to. I mean, it's they're kind of at the point where they're enemies of history, and I mean,
no, facts.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because I feel like that solution, like, while it sounds like it makes complete fucking sense, like, duh, right? It's like for some reason, whenever you start presenting them with historical data on like or historical information, like what happened,
kryptonite.
You can't even get them to agree that when LBJ became president, like, the party switch. They still doing that stupid shit where they're like, yo, the Democrats did own the KKK. I'm like, all right, bro, like, we still doing this? We still talking about this?
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
Chamber shit, bro.
And even and something a Fanatic brought up. I wanna. Fanac's been really quiet, so I'm gonna activate him a little bit. I do think that there is an importance in fathers, right? And I guess this is the conservative dog going to be coming out a little bit. Maybe it's not even a conservative dog.
No, you're right. Absolutely.
Is that like, I don't think that we as a collective community of people, I'm just saying like broadly in the United States, actually want to take the role of fathers seriously, where there's something to be said about having strong male role models in people's lives and the importance of that being a father. And the one thing that I think is really pervasive in communities is this idea of like, I can do this on my own. And I'm just like, that's fucking cope. Like, there's just like, and there's never like the one thing that I God, I don't know where I can say this without getting blasted by feminists, so I'll try it here. I get really frustrated in this vein of like, liberal girl boss feminism that says that I can do all these things by myself and I don't need a man, I don't need anybody. I'm just like, you are basically socializing your child to be a predator. And not only a predator, but a mercenary. Because basically you're saying, like, you're telling your kid that, like, you can do everything yourself without any connection to the community around you. And you get like the more like it's just baked in so much I guess you could say dangerous feminism that pervades communities. And I don't want to drag feminists too hard here, but it's a really frustrating vein that's emerged recently over the past like 10 to 15 years where no, you can't do everything by yourself. Like you're going to need to have a community of people around you that help socialize and acculturate your child. But your father, their father, your partner that had this kid is still a person that's important in their life and they should be involved in their life as well. I think like the idea that I just for me, right, I think that a child has a right to determine the relationship they have with both of their parents. And I think a lot of times single parents for one reason or another take that right away from their children, and then they just and because that person isn't there, they get the ability to set whatever narratives they want against that person, which I don't agree with at all.
No,
Yeah,
I was actually. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you good. You good. Go ahead.
No, I was about to say. I was looking for the study right now, but it's like generally whenever you look at any of like, because this is something I'm generally looking for. It's like when you're looking for male role models with males in general, the significance in that is like so massive for your quote unquote success in life. What they would generally deem as success, like we're talking money, or financial outcomes, all these things, even for schooling. You're right. I feel like it doesn't have to be a father specifically, but it has to be a male role model. Whether that's an uncle, whether that's someone you find on YouTube, like if some kid found like fucking M87 and was just like, yo, this dude knows what the fuck he's talking about, and like starts trying to like, look into things. It doesn't matter what the fuck it is, but it is highly important. And that's just because we look for things that are mirroring ourselves, right? To learn how to act. So if I see someone, as a kid, if you see someone who's like you, it's important. I know women are there, and I understand what you're talking about with the feminism thing, like because a lot of women currently are on that idea where it's like, hey, I can take care of my son on my own, and I'm not gonna say you can't. I'm sure you can provide for him and everything else, and there are things you can do, but the kid is probably gonna look for someone who looks like him, which is gonna be another man. That's just natural, and I just have I would say I agree. I'll stop there so
Yeah.
I can go
Well,
off.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think we're oriented differently. I don't think that I would be able to teach my daughter how to be a woman. I can teach her the best as I can, but I mean, realistically, that's not going to be a thing that I'm going to be particularly successful at, like instilling in her.
I mean, unless you're trying to raise a stud.
Right. Like it's just it doesn't make a lot of sense. And I think likewise, I don't really feel like I should. I don't think that that's realistic, and then I don't think.
Uh-oh.
You
Did he
just
cut
cut
out?
out.
Some wire got moved.
Another micro USB cable.
There it goes.
I don't think a woman can truly teach a boy to be a man. And that doesn't mean that you can't teach them to be productive members of society. It doesn't mean that they're not going to have other, whatever. But it's just it's not realistic. And I think, we kind of get lost in society when we start trying to promote the idea that we can. And I think you end up seeing young black boys being lost in the world
Yeah.
and developing resentment towards women for not having maybe their father around or whatever. And I think I think one of the really crazy statistics that I remember was that specifically when it comes to math outcomes, father in the home was like the most important. For math confidence. For mathematics confidence, a father in the home was it. It wasn't about single parenthood because single dads still had better outcomes than single mothers, right? It's just a thing. And I just feel like we try our best to just overlook this stuff and undermine it and just like, oh no, it's fine, everything will work out, and it doesn't. Like
I'll push on this. Not to cut you off. Sorry, my bad.
You can get ready for the next
Yeah.
topic, so let's go ahead and
Yeah,
finish
yeah,
up here.
yeah. The thing that I would push on is that I think you already believe this, so it might just be like just clarifying for the record, is men have a role in raising daughters. And I think the primary role is so that we set the agenda on what a healthy man looks like, and how that's externalized. Because one of the things that I've seen that's really pervasive, like I don't think that every single, I don't know, I guess I'll just say the take. I don't think every man is a nefarious being in a marriage. And something that I deeply disagree with, and this is where my girlfriend and I are worlds apart on this issue, is that if we were to get divorced, I still believe that my child has the right to see me. And it's not up to them to determine when and how that can be, or when that should be. And I think that like it's reasonable to say that if I'm a piece of shit, then that's a conclusion that my child texts, and they always are perpetuators of harm. And divorce is an example of how they are perpetuators of harm. When in reality, I think that like one of the most pervasive things in society is to say that like there are irreconcilable differences within a marriage. I think that creates such a crazy contradiction with kids. Where you're basically saying to like if you have an irreconcilable divorce, you're basically telling your kid that there are situations where there is no compromise possible, even with somebody you're sharing your life with, and that the only way to resolve that conflict is through complete separation. When that's not even how like we even teach kids. It's like, hey, if there's problems, you and the people that you're with work together to figure that out. But then you're saying at the same time that, oh, these are just irreconcilable differences, and there's no way process. Like,
Yeah.
like you sure about that?
Yeah,
Go for it.
I just want to, I agree for the most part with that. The only thing I want to just add in before we kind of move on was, I want to speak towards the, when you said that fathers have a role in raising their daughters and stuff like that. And this kind of goes along, it kind of applies to like the boys as well, or sons as well, and also applies to like the school situation as well. You men have to, parents both, and especially the fathers need to be, how do I put this? They need to be pretty well acclimated with the culture and how the culture evolves, because like you can try to raise, what I see a lot of is fathers try to raise their sons how they like they try to raise them in conjunction with the culture how they were raised. You know what I'm trying to say?
Right.
So a quick example, like I'm coming up, I'm like a 5'9" dude trying to figure out, like my brother had like a way of teaching me hard, dark, and handsome, that whole nine. My dad was like 6 feet, and all he did was dance, and that's all they really said. Hey, my brother said, hey, just go talk to him, but he had like the things that girls kind of like, you know what I'm saying, or during that time period. My dad said, man, go up and dance with him, man, and he was like this great dancer, but that was like the disco era, you know what I'm saying. Girls these days don't. It's a lot like that whole dancing culture is a lot different now. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to say. So I'm just saying, like, for the parents out there that did receive what you just said, you got to keep up with like what's happening during that time period.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
No, I like that a lot. Oh,
go ahead. Go
My
ahead. Yeah,
bad.
I got something to say to that too. Go ahead.
My bad. I'm gonna try to make it quick. No, I like what he just said, and I wanted to specify or say again that it's like those studies I saw before were all about male role models, not just the father. And I think that kind of speaks to it. It's like it doesn't have to be the father. Like it was his older brother, right? Someone that the young male thinks is cool is generally the one that's going to get through to him. Because if I don't even respect you, I'm probably not going to listen to anything you say. I'm like, all right, man, like whatever. But like if I think you're cool, like I remember for me it was my sister had a guy she was dating on the basketball team, and I remember he'd come over and he would just say things to me. And all that shit stuck to this day. I remember a lot of things. And I mean, again, like if we don't have these male role models, what happens is these dudes end up looking for some validation or some understanding of how to act. and they end up on the Fresh and Fitting podcast or some stupid shit like that, right?
Yup. Or then they're sucking dick in the parking lot and catching AIDS. But no,
all right, nigga, I can say
they canceled the baby. They aborted him. Dude, freak. Hold on. There was a point that someone had said. When it comes to, dang it, nigga, it's leaving me. Jeez, come on.
Talking about
10
me.
seconds. 10 seconds. It was what you had said, and it was about. Oh, yes. I experienced that. And it's something. The idea that people live in the context that they were born in and don't recognize that, like, the times now don't apply to what they were thinking then. And I was realizing when it came to counseling at the time I was engaged and I was like dealing with different people, and the elder generation, maybe about 20 years older than myself, they all lived through a world and a time where women were like crazily subjugated, and just the dudes were just doing all sorts of atrocities, and so the women were just getting taken for a freaking ride, and it was really, really gross. And so all of their counseling was aimed at the idea that, like, hey, you got to be a better dude. Don't succumb to these things, and just be a better person. Like, right? It was all about me and how I needed to make sure that I'm a good guy. I'm a particularly good guy. And I felt like they were so wrapped up in the way things used to be and they are so wrapped up in the way that things used to be, that nowadays women get away with all sorts of atrocities and no one's ever going to hold them accountable. And I think this is almost similar, and I know this is a bit of a digression, but this is almost similar to like when we're talking about like the school shooting thing, where it's like when the white kids do it, it's just like, yeah, they kind of can't help it, they're just these whatever. And I feel like in reality, sorry, I'm making a decision. So we make these decisions. I'm always playing the game when we're talking. But we make these decisions where, like, we'll look when we look at the white kids, we'll make all the excuses and all the justification and all those things, but we'll never hold them accountable. When it's a black person, we just go ahead and we're just like, nope, you shouldn't be doing this, and it's just the rules. Same thing when it comes to women. We look at all of these poor outcomes that come from single parent households in which women are there, and then we don't look at it and say, hey, this is not a job that you're capable of doing. Instead, we just always like, oh, men abandon families, right? We don't look at the fact that the majority of men do want to be involved in their children's lives, even in the cases in which they separate from their significant others. Instead, we just go ahead and pretend as if these women, on a lot of these occasions, aren't poisoning the children against their whatever, making it as difficult as possible, trying to be like extract as much money as possible while like denying them actual access, like literally just being inhibitors in every way, shape, or form. And then we look at these outcomes and we start saying like, okay, well, how did this freaking happen? And we wouldn't, if it wasn't for the fact that it was women doing it, if it had been men doing it, everyone would be looking at it and they would be saying, hey, men, you shouldn't be doing this. This is foul. But when it's women, it's like, well, sometimes men, and we start making excuses. One of my favorites, and I'll close with this, there's a meme where they like ask, hey, my wife is yelling at me. What can I do? And it's like, it's like my husband is yelling at me. Why is my husband yelling at me? And the immediate response is, here's the hotline for like abuse and da 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 da. And then then the husband says, my wife is yelling at me, like, whatever. And then like it's like, well, here's the various reasons that she might be yelling at you. She could be yelling at you because she feels unheard, financial stress, and it just gives all of these justifications for why she's yelling. But when it comes to men, it's like, no, don't do it. Men will say, you should never hit a woman. We don't say women shouldn't hit men. It's like, what caused her to hit that man? We do that. Same thing with white folks. They just got the privilege of assumption that they're, well intended.
That's a fucking good point.
Yes,
Go ahead.
something that you said within that, because I want to kind of pivot back. I love going after feminists, but I'm gonna have to do an impasse. But I'll say this: like, one thing that I have pretty instilled in my teaching now is, and I don't remember which one of my teachers said it, was pretty early on when I was learning, but basically it kind of just stuck with me and I just replicate it. Where I tell every new student that I have that like my job is to make you better than I am, and also better than I was when you started right now. And I translate that into kind of my general thought on parenting, where I think a successful parent is the type of parent that is able to make their child better in all of the areas that they were efficient deficient in when they were growing up. So I don't want my kid to ever have to worry about dealing with a home eviction. I never want my kid to go through that. I need to make sure that my kid in that area of like personal finance and navigation at my point where I was at 20, well, rather 21, and then later at 32, that they're just ready for that. They're ready for that, how to navigate with that. I want my kid to be a better musician than me. Like, I am a musician, and I think it's my duty to make sure that my kid's better than me in all aspects of what that means. I think what a lot of parents do indirectly, without even knowing that they do it before it's too late, is that their particularness in their parenting creates an environment where their child's success is secondary to their development. So they will passively withhold information that could be helpful in certain contexts. They will stunt them in such a way that creates a level of dependence on them, even up to the point when they're in their 20s or 30s, where like your goal as a parent should be like your child is the shit. Like you should be able to as a parent go, yeah, my child's the shit. He got all his shit together. She got all her shit together. She's a business, whatever you want it to be. She's a business owner. She works at this, does that. Basically where they can look back and go like, okay, my parents, my father, my mother didn't have these things, weren't able to achieve these things, but I made sure that like, but they made sure that I was able to have opportunities that led to these type of things. And that's really hard. Like, I think it's like biting an ego bullet. I think it's taking humility in the fact that you actually don't know everything and making sure that every aspect of your parenting is making sure that your child is better than you in every area of activity. And I don't think a lot of like when we're building families and building what parenting is, I don't think a lot of people think that way.
Me too. And we started making it together after that.
Where he staying?
Harvard, Local House, second floor, right on the couch. Me too. And we started making it together after that.
Where he staying?
Harvard, Local House, second floor, right on the couch.
You're not muted. Oh,
Nate,
I'm
you're coming
muted
through for a
I'm muted to
stream.
the chat.
Me too.
okay.
And we started
Appreciate
making
it.
together after
So
that.
let me run it back.
Where he staying?
And thank you for all the subs. Appreciate you all. Hype Train. Thank you, Philly. Appreciate
Right on the
you.
couch.
On an even playing field, should black people be forced to act to a higher standard or face disparate consequences?
Where he staying?
Miami Dolphins star wide receiver Tariq Hill was pulled from his sports car by Miami-Dade County police officers outside Hard Rock Stadium during a traffic stop before the team's game on Sunday, triggering a national debate on whether the treatment was
Where he
justified.
staying?
Hill, 30, was pushed onto the ground face first, handcuffed, and then again forced to the ground despite his complaint that his sitting on the curb caused pain in his surgically repaired knee. Hill was eventually released after receiving citations for careless driving and failing to wear a seatbelt. The total fine is $309. His salary this season is almost $20 million. Hours later, he caught an 80-yard touchdown pass that sparked the Dolphins' comeback win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. And thank you all for your generosity. Appreciate you. We are at Hype Train Level 3. Thank you all, and I hope you were enjoying the conversation. So, starting with Fanatic, how do we feel about this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the question in and of itself is should black people experience racism? And the answer is obviously no. I didn't like the Tyreek situation because it felt like he was being a little bit aggressive unnecessarily. I don't know why he rolled his window up. You knew what the freak did. You know what time it is, right? It doesn't justify anything that the officers were doing, of course. But nigga, don't invite conflict. Don't invite issues. And I feel like him doing that was him inviting that issue. And so I didn't like that. It felt to me like you're asking for trouble unnecessarily.
I mean, if we're answering to that second question, I'm assuming that's what's happening. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I was actually talking about this with my brother
Well,
just
these
before
are
we started this
openings,
shit.
so like everybody gets an opening statement before we start up.
Oh,
So
no, then I'm exactly there. Once he rolled his window up, like even if we were to allow all the racism that cops have and everything else, especially during Miami, it's probably a Cuban dude. Let's be real. At the end of the day, it's like I would never in my fucking life roll up my tinted windows when a cop is talking to me, and then assume him to be nice to me when I roll them back down, bro. Anything could happen. You know what I mean? So he kind of lost favor with me almost immediately after that. I was like, all right, dog, like this could have been a quick ticket, but you just made this a lot bigger, and that's unfortunate to be honest. But yeah,
all right.
I don't have much different to say than what you guys kind of already said. I mean, I still don't like the extra shit that kind of just happened. I mean, like I said, the dude had a injured shoulder. They kneeled on it anyway. I kind of just, I mean, I don't know how the house really put this. They kind of gave me the George Floyd vibes. This is maybe that's just me. I'm glad it didn't spiral out of control further than it did. Not much to really add to that, man. I was just it kind of it's kind of an open shut case for me when I was initially exposed to it. So
All right, Joe.
I'll gently say that there's a level of separation that Tyreek Hill has with what it means to be a Black American, and what it means to be Black and of wealth, and what it means to be Black and of wealth and of an athlete. So I really hope that this was a wake up call for him to stop with his fuckery, because in Miami, that's just every day. He's being a nigga in Miami. That is basically a crime in that area. Um, no different than how Marshawn Lynch learned the hard way that being Black in Buffalo is basically a crime, even if you are the starting running back for the Buffalo Bills. So your Blackness and who you are as a Black person is contextual on where you find yourself, because God, like, it's reasonable to say that the officers had no idea who Tyreek Hill is, and that's something that Tyreek Hill has to come to terms with, because you're in Miami. There's just, but that aside from that, being Black is not just a identifier that people have for themselves. It is a social identity, it's a political identity, it's an economic identity, it's all of those things. And something that um kind of annoys me, but not annoys me enough to like write a blog post about it, is there's this idea that if the playing field was neutral, then these outcomes would be similar. But the only way for outcomes to be similar is that the idea and what we know as Black does not exist. Like the minute people posit the question, oh, if you like in a level playing field, if all the systems were the same, and if you're Black, like, and if the white and Black person does the same thing, should it lead to the same outcome? And it's like the minute you have to categorize white and Black, there's already inherent differences within the system that you're presenting, because Black and white people are not the same. We are not the same when we are identified socially. We're not the same when we're identified politically, economically. There's no level of sameness. So the only way for sameness to exist is for what we know to be Black people to not exist in the American context. And that's why this like colorblind, race neutral rhetoric makes no sense, because it's like, okay, we want to recognize racial differences, but we don't want to recognize the racial differences that exist as these groups relate to in these institutions. But somehow, if we just like push towards neutrality, that's the way. Like it's such bullshit. And,
I wanted
but
to.
anyway, I'll leave
No,
that for there.
I was gonna add in there. I don't know if we want to take it here, but I feel like I'm kind of happy with how this panel right here just decided to dissect that same situation that I did. Just because I feel like one of the things that kills me the most, especially and it kind of lets me down with my friends sometimes, where you run interference for things that are just like straight fuckery. Like this is one of those situations where it's like you don't have to die on this hill. This is not the Black man you need to die on to like prove to everybody that we're not like, you know what I mean? Does that make sense? There's a lot of situations where we get the short end of the stick, and I was like, this is not one of those situations where I'd be like, I need to defend this man in front of all my white friends because it loses our credibility. I'm be honest with you. Sometimes I'm just like, bro, they won't listen to shit. It's almost like you look like almost like a Republican trying to defend stupid shit. Like after a while, I'm like, I don't want to hear anything you have to say. You can't see things.
Dude, real quick, man. Like, dude, my mayor like literally just just applied the race card to some shit that had nothing to do with anything. So I completely understand what you're talking about. Like they asked us to do like a simple question about him traveling to what's the fucking place called to London, and then he's like, "What? I'm a black man can't go to London." I'm like, "Nigga, what the fuck are you doing?"
This ain't the time. Yeah,
Yeah, but I don't think we lose any credibility by defending him, and I'm going to explain why. Because despite the fact that, yes, I do believe he made some pretty dumb decisions, right? Rolling up the window and the like. It doesn't exonerate the officers. They clearly were like being intentionally inflammatory. They didn't need him to get out of the car after he rolled the window down. Then when he got out of the car, the guy was like literally yelling at him the entire time and oh, sit down right now. And, you know, they were literally trying to claim he was resisting when he wasn't. And the officer just had something to prove, right? Like I wish I had it like fresh in my memory, but there was something where either way, the officer was going above and beyond and then like mischaracterizing even some of his actions. Like, sure, he wasn't showing the ultimate deference, right? He wasn't being some obsequious nigga, but the fact of the matter was he was within the law. So the officer was absolutely trying to violate his civil rights and going above and beyond, and I can defend that. Now, I don't justify you rolling up the window. I think that was stupid, and I don't think that, you know, whatever, but I don't think that just because he made some mistakes that therefore I should ignore the mistakes of the officer, right? Because we are always operating under the notion that we have to be perfect. And even when you got cases like Philando Castile, who I don't think did anything freaking wrong, and it didn't still save his life. And the officer still felt he feared for his life, et cetera, right? So ultimately, I don't think I never want to be the person who's just like, nah, we got to do better.
No,
shit.
You cut out. Hey, hold up, Finetti.
Like, cable. No,
Bro's going
cable,
crazy.
cable.
He just
It's the cable. It's the cable.
It's got to be the cable.
man.
Wait, I don't know what it is.
I want to
gotta be careful with that.
God,
There
my
you go.
bad.
It's back. You're back.
Okay, it's absolutely the cable. I just don't want us to ever get to the point where because someone made a mistake that we now are what is it? What do they call it? The Nirvana fallacy, where it's not perfect enough, so therefore we can't say anything. I don't want that.
Sure.
It's good enough. We can still point out the inaccuracies and the failings of that officer, the same way I can point out the inaccuracies and the failings of what Tyreek did.
Yeah, I'd say I agree with you. I think the way that you articulated it, I think, is the way that people need to think about it. Where on one hand, Tyreek was doing some nigga shit. When he rolled that window up, I'm like, oh, this man just says, I would like to get beat up by law enforcement today. That's just on my ticket of things. And the problem with that is there's which again, like, this is why I respectfully do not like athletes because there's like a relationship that athletes have with the broader community, and then they abuse that relationship with the broader community. Then they run into the dude that does not watch football, and then that dude that does not watch football will put hands on you. Like there's no world where you are immune from those hands. Because like we've seen this happen in other situations. Like we've seen the state go after senators and Congress members. We've seen the state go after athletes. We've seen the state go after celebrities. And then depending on your level of notoriety and fame, you'll get people mid fuckery of going, wait a minute. Is that, oh no, that's Maxine Waters. Oh no. Like, and then you just see like, oh, my career is over now. Where for Tyreek Hill, he's lucky. Where basically the state said, we don't really care that much about football here, and we do not want to go after the institution of the NFL, so we're just going to kind of we're going to take this L, but we're not going to hold anybody accountable for their fuck shit. Like, we're just going to let the court of public opinion be like, oh, those cops those cops should not have handled him the way that they did, but, you know, he's Tyreek Hill, he's got the money. And it's like, well, hang on. Nobody should be, even in the face of a rowdy customer, should that rowdy customer be treated less than human in the exchange? And again, the consequences are more significant for law enforcement than it is like a customer at a grocery store. But like cops know better. Like they know better. They know that, hey, even if this person is being a complete asshole, I still have a responsibility to ensure that their safety while I issue them these tickets. Like these tickets are not going away, but at the very least, I can make sure that they're treated like a normal human being in this exchange. And those officers did not do that.
Right. I'll tell you the hill that we didn't need to die on. The hill we didn't need to die on was the Jacob Blake hill. That was the hill that pissed me off. Where I was like, why the freak is everyone going ham over this situation when this nigga clearly did everything he could to get himself shot? Thankfully, he's alive. But that to me didn't make any freaking sense. That nigga failed.
Well, I think the like for me on that is that he didn't have like there's conditions and there's a lot to that case. I don't want to relitigate that too much, but there's a lot to what we want law enforcement to be. In the current state of law enforcement, that outcome is him getting shot almost 99% of that exchange. Like if you replicated that exchange 1,000 times, I would say at least 900 of those times he's getting shot. But then the question is like, how can we hold people accountable in a police environment and like a public safety environment without them ending up paralyzed, ending up shot? And I don't know if the current structure of America has an answer to that question, at least not right now.
Sure. I mean, I'm gonna be real with you. I feel like he should have been shot though.
Again, like I'm not gonna say that. I'll say that in the context of America, him getting shot is the logical conclusion to the situation, which might be just me saying the same thing as you are.
Semantics, yeah, you're just playing it safer. I feel you.
Yeah, like bro. I mean, I've been wrestled by two cops. I free myself from their wrestling. I've been tased. I continue to walk into my car while they're trying their best to constrain me or to restrain me. I reach into my car. Yeah, at that point I got to get shot.
Yeah, and that's like that's even the thing.
Now they failed. Let me make sure I hold them accountable too, though.
Right.
I would say both of them niggas needed to be fired. If two of you niggas with tasers and whatnot can't restrain a single nigga, get off the force. You failed, and that's why it got to that point in the first place.
So you
like how the hell?
So Vinay, you be that police chief, or it's like this is a justified shooting. It's like, hang on, guys, can you come in here? Listen, I don't think you should be handling people.
Legit. Like I gotta defend them. At this point, you're immediately a danger. I remember I was arguing with some of my friends about this because they were like, "Nah, man, they didn't need to shoot him. No, they could." And I'm like, "Oh, sure, I got you." And there was this traffic stop, man. It was crazy. It was a traffic stop on the side of the freeway, and the guy's like, "Okay, da da da." They're like, "Yeah, whatever." And then he just reaches into his car, like, and within 2 seconds, shoots at both of the officers. One of them gets hit, the other one jumps over the railing, and it was like an immediate shootout. Literally, it took him less than 2 seconds. He reached into the car and immediately like opened fire on them officers. The second you reach into the if I reach into the car to have a gun, I mean, Joe, you play fighting games. You're not reacting to turn shoot. You're not. Like in that second, that's not. You know what I mean? Like we're already you could die in that moment. So to me, it's like, yeah, no, the second you reach into your car, bruh, I'm shooting you. However, that chief need to go ahead and let them know neither one of y'all niggas can do your job. You both failed miserably, and so yes, you did the lawfully legal thing, but you failed, which is what led to you even being able to be in that legal situation. So yeah, get off the force.
Yeah, this reminds me of the shooting of Victoria Lee. Which should have created a lot more pissed off. I am angry at progressive and leftists because they absolutely failed this woman. So long story short, Victoria Lee was having a mental health crisis in Fort Lee, New Jersey, and she basically was holding up her apartment. So that's the scene. She's holding up her apartment, and there's an officer behind two other officers. One of the officers at the door has a riot shield. I'm gonna say this again. The officer that's at the door ready has a riot shield. And between them and Victoria Lee is also the door of the apartment. So you get that picture, riot shield, door, her. They essentially knock the door down. And this officer does one, she says, put down the knife, shoots her. And it turns out she was carrying a 5 5-gallon water bottle jug. And the officer mistook that for a knife. And I am thinking, I'm just approaching this logically. If I'm in a pressure situation, could I mistake a 5-gallon water jug for a knife? And I've tried every argument I possibly could. I can't come up with one, especially considering between him and her is a riot shield, an officer, and a door. And he thought it was a good idea to blast her in her own apartment. And what's so telling in the footage, he says, "Where's the knife?" And my brain's like, oh, this man's going to have a hard time. This man's going to have a very hard time in court. Um, and to your point, Fanatic, that's like the problem where we can accept that, like, hey, people can put themselves in situations where they get justifiably blasted. But at the same time, there's so many instances where we don't look at the officer and go, yeah, but you should not be a cop anymore. Where for me, like in the case of Jacob Blake, to your point, like those officers should not have a job anymore. Like, or at the very least, not a job engaging with the public directly like that. In the case of this officer who shot this woman, the investigation's still ongoing at this point. This happened back in August, but I see no reason why that man is not charged with murder, or he's not fired. I don't see a world where he keeps his job and doesn't see charges. Like, it's crazy.
What ethnicity was Victoria Lee?
She was Asian.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm hoping the AAPI community takes this one on up. I don't know if I'm gonna really get involved, but you know what I mean. They got to do what they got to do.
You toxic fuck.
So I was looking at this situation in comparison to the one where the deputy or the district attorney was pulled over and she decided to drive home, go into her garage, go into her home. The officer's just outside letting her do all this. Like the disparity in the treatment of these two individuals, because I don't believe he knew that that was the DA, but he knew that she was well off and didn't like grab her out of the car, didn't do anything crazy, and let her go into her home where she could have came out with a firearm.
Right.
So to see the disparity in treatment in these situations, being that both people are well off, I think this plays more into my mind when seeing the situation.
I don't. A 5, it's comically negligible for me. I still can't get over that fact. Like, I kept that like in me for a while, and just my brain settled with that. Like, this fact is in my head. It's just like reciting that again. It's like, damn, how can you be that dumb?
And they let them do it.
Let him do it. Like, ugh.
Yeah, that
And then you
bounce
need an
back
investigation. An investigation for what? Like. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah,
Josh?
that bounce back is like quite serious when it comes to like other ethnic groups. Like at the moment of which somebody like especially like a black person does something like offensive or like aggravating to law enforcement, stuff like that, the tolerance is just almost non-existent. You know what I'm saying? Whereas we see white folks just kind of do the most. You know what I'm saying? And there's almost like a slap on the wrist in comparison to what they would do to somebody that doesn't look like them. You know what I'm saying? So that's something that I kind of had like conversation with some of my friends about like um again this bounce back idea that you can just something bad happens, so you can just kind of bounce back to like everybody like a neutral setting. I mean, I play fighting games too. Like you get the hard knockdown, something happens, and then you just get back on neutral instead of the person that pursued that instead of somebody pursuing a additional mix up. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So
And in some situations, like I love using fighting games as an example. Like, one of the things that, depending on the games you play, try to prioritize is that, like, yeah, your cheeks will be closed eventually. Like, your cheeks are open currently, but eventually they will be released.
this is a Dead or Alive reference.
Yeah, we're like the one thing that, like, well, there's a lot to that. Like, If I'm speaking in terms of Marvel 2, there's like, and Fnatic can speak this better than I can. There's multiple situations where you get hit, and then it's like, okay, I'm no longer playing this game anymore,
Yes,
and
yes.
I am two guesses away from not playing the game anymore for sure. But then also too, like the problem with I bring that up to say that like one thing that fighting games try to do or trying to do from a development standpoint is to create more situations where you don't get eternally punished off of one mistake. Like one of the things that anime fighters like hearing anime fighters cope about their trauma in their games is really funny because
Oh
they'll just
no,
be like, I
big
whiffed my
monkey.
2B and I died. And it's like, what? How much
Yeah.
health did you have? Oh, I was at full health. Okay. Like, what
Yeah.
happened to you? Well, I just got, I whiffed and I got punished. And then we went back to neutral after I got hit for like 20, 30%. And the Marvel players go, yeah, I died too. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. Like,
Yeah.
does one punishment indicative of your entire life bar being depleted? In outside of the gaming environment, the answer is no. Like, you don't want your entire life bar depleted unless like there's insane amounts of fuckery to be had. Like,
God forbid there's a good a guard break set up on the way on
oh yeah,
incoming.
and
Yeah, so
I'm trying to trigger Fnatic because Fnatic knows exactly what I'm talking about. 'Cause he
I
plays
do.
Toxic
No,
Team.
100%. I just,
Like,
the thing is that kills me, man, is it just feels like this is really gross because to be honest with you, I feel somewhat even guilty even having this conversation in front of other folks because what ends up happening is they are looking and begging for excuses to justify the actions of this stupid officer, of those officers in that scenario. So if you give any kind of critique of Tyreek in this situation, then they almost, their first thing is like, yeah, I mean, he kind of did, I mean, in reality, like it kind of is his fault. And it's like, I hate that. I hate it with my soul. And so I feel like I'm like naturally reluctant to admit like his fault in front of white people because
Yeah.
they want that. They need
do you think?
excuses.
Yeah, can I ask something? Like,
Go
where do
ahead.
you guys sit on? Because one thing that I advocate for in education and just like in family development, all this type of stuff is like having a firm grasp of consequential thinking. I think by virtue of playing games, I think that's something that it teaches us. I think it teaches us consequential thinking because a lot of times those situations are very simple where it's like, hey, if I have low life and I'm in the corner and I jump, I might just die. Like there's just kind of, and then like I can't say like, well, why'd you die? Oh, I jumped. Like, but this character's bullshit, and it's like, you probably shouldn't have jumped though.
Yeah.
But if I jumped, I would have gotten full combo. And it's like, but couldn't you have also gotten the same thing on the ground? It's a little bit safer. It's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, well you think about it that way, that makes a lot of sense. I think like the way that games teach consequential thinking is something that I wish existed more prevalent in society. Um, the idea of like, hey, these particular actions could lead to consequences that could lead you being paralyzed. And there's even in your moment of like heightened awareness of like you trying to survive, that still has to be like in the back of your head.
Yeah, I don't think that thing hits all of us equally, to be honest. I think there are some people who are just gonna hold up regardless. Jumpers, and then also I think I I feel like for Black people we just automatically have that way of thinking. We're like we were talking about like um when you see like remember that show When Animals Attack, and the most of the people on that show that were getting attacked by the animals were the Caucasians. And I felt like a lot of that was because, someone pointed out they don't have any natural predators, on this earth, right? So for them, their privilege tells them, hey, I should be able. Why can't I get in the cage with this polar bear? Like I mean, it's a loving, happy creature, and it's gonna love me, and it's sweet, and so then they feel like they should be able to do that, and so I feel like that's that privilege. Whereas Black people are forever learning the consequences of our action because we are going to be the ones held accountable. Black person does something and a white person does something. A white person can do something in front. A white person can do something in front of an officer, and the officer will completely ignore it. A black person, it's like, oh, we're gonna get you. I remember at my school they did this thing where the dress code required all T-shirts to be tucked into your pants. Okay, you could not just have your T-shirt hanging. Any shirts, they needed to be tucked into a belt. And I remember walking down the thing, and the vice principal comes up and is like, "Hey, you got to come to the office because my pants weren't, my shirt wasn't tucked in." Literally, no one followed that rule. He just chose to enforce it against me. White people jaywalk all the time. If I jaywalk, they're going to enforce that against me. And so you start realizing, like, we're always thinking of what can go wrong. I have a freaking spider sense. When I'm driving, if there's a police car nearby, like if that drives by in the opposite direction, my eyes will catch it. I can't avoid it. Like, it's just something that we have typically as black men. That's a privilege. I mean, that's whereas other people are just like going through life loving it. Like, yeah, you know, it's good. I'm just going for a drive. And it's like, dang, nigga, I'm a little bit nervous. You know what I'm saying?
Or even just I don't know how to explain this clearly, but I'll try. Like, so I want to make sure, like, maybe maybe you can piggyback on this. There's like a level of like awareness where you can just kind of tell in the first couple minutes, like, yeah, there's some fuck shit going on here. I'm going to go this way. And for some people, it's like, nah, it's fine. It's totally great. And it's just like, like,
Yeah.
like I'm in the like an example of this. It's not the greatest example. When Noel Brown put some hands on another member of the community, I
Classic.
was in the room when that happened. I left. No, I see Noel Brown. I'm gonna try to paint the picture for those who know how the break is set up. I see Noel Brown getting heated by the dance machines, and I see the one chef who does like the break steaks try to like talk no, basically 5 niggas trying to talk Noel down. I'm like, you know what? And like I see KDZ look at me and he point to go outside. And I'm like, yep, this is correct. And then the minute as I'm walking outside, Noel engages. And if you look in the clip, you'll see a black man in the back, and that's me. And, like, you'll see me out of frame for a second. The fight happens, and it's like, damn, that dude Max Out was just sitting there, completely unaware of the fuckery that was about to happen. And like, some people have that, like, get that sense. But I think for most people, like for Black Americans, I found, especially Black men, like we have that sense a little bit more, like a higher proclivity to that. If I had to make an argument.
Yep, 100%. We just naturally have consequential thinking. Yeah, we just don't have the privilege of feeling comfortable at all times. The world isn't like catered towards us. Do you remember, man? Everyone here has seen Get Out. Okay, so that scene at the end of the movie, I really think that's one of the most wonderful movies ever made. There's that scene at the end of the movie where he has his hand around her neck, car drives up with the lights, and despite the fact that everything he's been through, all of us immediately our stomach drops because it's like, oh God, here we go. That's like the first thought. It doesn't matter the fact that he was, the one that was the victim. It doesn't matter the fact that there's evidence and that the house is on fire. It doesn't matter any of those other circumstances. The first thought is, oh God, here it goes. That's it, right? We think of our consequences. They just don't have that. They just don't have that fear.
That wasn't the original ending he was going for, right?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, that he was actually gonna. The ending that he wanted was actually him actually getting killed there.
Jeez.
Oh shit.
Thank goodness somebody talked him off the ledge there. That would have been terrible.
Yeah, look, I mean, it had a lot to do with, from what I remember, he said it had a lot to do with the current times that they're in, because like at the time of him writing that, things were like, I believe it was like I can't remember the timeline, but the current times was like, okay, this is what it's like to be Black in America, getting just off by the police and stuff. I really think it has something to do with George Floyd.
I mean,
I can only
that could have worked in its own right? Like if he did go that route, because then people would have empathized with the main character. White people would have empathized with the main character, and then saw someone they recognized die to cops, and maybe that might have had an effect that would have been positive. But I like this ending more. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah.
My girlfriend and I have been on this stick of watching Tubi movies.
Oh no.
And bro, don't bring this shit up on stream, dog.
And a movie that we watched the other day is called Becky. Um, and yeah, and basically, I recommend people watching Tubi, like shitty black Tubi movies, because they are amazing in like really subtle, terrible ways. But what's interesting about this movie is that basically there's like, long story short, I'm just gonna spoil it because like it's a Tubi movie. Like, come on now, like, it's basically white lady fuckery, like white lady cheating on husband, black husband fuckery, and there's a point in the movie where like this lady escalates, she starts killing neighbors and shit for the sake of this black man. It's all types of crazy. And in the end, like she ends up dying. Like the couple ends up killing her. And then she's like, and then like the end of the movie, which is just like them laying in like a puddle of blood with this dead white girl and these dead people that she's killed in someone else's house that they broke into, which was hers. And then they realize that like we're going to jail.
That don't look good
Like,
at all.
like, and it's funny because like that scene to me, I don't say it's a powerful scene. It's a stupid movie, but it's like really indicative of like why consequential thinking is so important. Because like the build up to that is basically the wife finds out that like, oh, this white lady's just been tripping on some fuckery. Now I'm gonna go fight this bitch. And then like the guy's like, no, I don't think we should do that. We should probably just call the police. Like we should probably just deal with it that way. Like we don't have to go over there. She's clearly setting us up. And he's like, no, I'm going over there. I'm going over there. And then of course like fuckery ensues. And then in a lot of ways, movies like I don't know why they do this very often, but there's always like this I'm moving beyond that movie into like more of like the horror genre is kind of pervasive on this, where it's always like the black characters that have that consequential thinking in spite of white fuckery. Where
I got a question. So, do you think sometimes that consequential thinking spider sense can kind of kick in a little bit too late? Because
Yeah,
like
Sure.
so like I would say like sometimes when like maybe something that's going on with my parents or my mom or something like that, like I would do something, I'm like, you know what, I'm low key finna get my ass up because of this.
yeah.
So so low key I kind of think that kind of will happen with Tariq.
Or
He
you go
probably I do
against-
believe black men do have this ability to like pick on when they fucked up, and then it probably just kicked in right as he was that button hit it. I mean that the window hit maybe it's like 75% up, and he like, you know what, I might as well commit to it now.
Yeah, like you see the way that the way I kind of joke about it is that like you kind of see like the future you looking at you in the mirror and going, "Yeah, homie, you fucked up."
Yeah.
and then like at the same time, you both look at each other and come to the same conclusion, like, "Up, too late now."
I
Fuck
definitely
it.
feel like no, I feel like emotional development definitely plays a huge
Yeah.
role in those type of situations, right? Because like people like to act like emotionality is like something like it's in your head, bro. You need to just be logical, but realistically, emotions are imprinted on the planet, and that's why we have wars. That's why we have all these things happening. A lot of times, people feel disrespected. People do things on the real plane, right?
Okay.
And just like with these situations here, it's like even if I'm aware, like I could pick up on that, just like you were just saying, I could pick up on a situation and be like, this is gonna get bad. But if I'm hyped up and I feel disrespected, like I might do it anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
Like-
for sure.
When crash
Yeah,
outs
so-
begin.
That bruh, I was the original
Or
crash out. You
even-
don't understand, Lee.
Yeah, or even just like I think the biggest tell, like if we're speaking to the Tyreek Hill situation, like directly a bit, like something that teaches us, I think, or hope to teaches us, is like the state will inflict harm on you, and you don't want to give them opportunities to inflict that harm. And the problem is that like in a lot of ways, like it can be really pervasive. Where I brought this up in Lick's Discord about a situation that happened to me at a school that I was working at. But basically, for lack of a better, like to really like paraphrase it, I don't play the national anthem, but I'm responsible for playing the national anthem. But since I play clarinet, there's other people who play this song. So I get to just kind of sit it out. And I've been dodging that anthem for years. Like, and then when I finally had to be a marching band director or being just like in the position of like, ah, shit, I gotta direct myself towards this fucking flag. So I sat, and that pissed. When you sit for the anthem in a predominantly white school, they will rain down upon a few, and which is what happened. And obviously, there's like compromise, and there was like some compromise that ended up coming from that due to some like just some decision making and collaboration with the district. But at the end of the day, it's like we are so pre-positioned of understanding of like, hey, the state will come down upon the few, and depending on how like comfortable you are, it might be a surprise or it might be like, yeah, I expected it. Like I knew, like the minute I sat, I knew that there was going to be problems. Like I knew there was going to be problems. There's a lady at a school board meeting that was crying because of me, because of how deeply I was disrespecting the black. And then it just came down to me having these weird ass meetings about like my actions during the anthem. And then I stood, and that wasn't good enough. And it's like, okay, I can't sit, I can't stand. So what's a brother supposed to do? And then like it came to like
crazy.
you have to, and all it was a semantical of standing hand over heart. That was a disagreement. The resolution was that like I just wasn't going to go out there for that. But the thing that I think people forget in the moment when they're engaging with the state is that like they can and will make it rain. Like they have a very the state will gaslight you to make you think that you did not block when you knew you were blocking the entire time. Like it's just, and they have a whole set of unblockables that like nobody else knows about and nobody else can do except for them. So for like Tyreek, it's like, yeah, don't play those games. Don't let the state, don't give reasons for the state to abuse you. Even if you think that like it's justified. But again, like that's what being black in America is. Like there's like a subtle different set of rules that we play under.
Yeah.
And then you get white folks who insist that those rules don't exist. Like they'll
Right.
Yep.
insist.
I feel like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I remember the initial question was something along the lines of like, do we feel like it's okay that these things exist, like these inequalities? And it's like one of those things where it's like, it's not okay, clearly. It's one of those things where I'd be stupid to tell my son or something like that I don't have one. But if I did, I'd be dumb to tell him like, hey, bro, just act normal, act like everybody else. It doesn't work that way. Like you have to be a little bit better a lot of times. And again, it's one of those things that's not going to change until years later. Maybe. I don't know what the future looks like, but I know for a fact that like currently you just doing Tyreek Hill shit could get you in a lot of trouble, right?
It's short-term survivability against a long-term struggle. Like we're not going to change policing tomorrow. We're not going to change policing the next day.
We're not going to change the view of black people in America tomorrow.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
Yeah. And then like what happens is people look at the survival strategies that black people make just to get through to day 1 to day 2 and then think like, oh, just do that all the time. If you do that all the time, you're fine. And it's like, I mean, sure, but shouldn't we like change things so that we don't have to do these survival strategies as the default manual? And then that's when the resistance comes, where it's like, well, their job is so difficult. Being a law enforcement officer is one of the hardest things someone can do.
Yeah, don't you know?
Like, yeah.
Bro is strapped in every situation.
Shoes.
Yeah. Think about how they feel. And then meanwhile, like my girlfriend and I got into a meme argument where like I was saying that being running for like as far as what a civilian can do, that like with no experience, no training, no whatsoever, I think it would be harder to run for president than it is to give birth to a child. And the more I think about my take on that, the more I think that, in actuality, like a lot of these things that we do in the world is actually pretty fucking easy. And officers like to hide the fact that what they have to do is actually very easy, but they mask it in these like levels of difficulty, which is just don't brutalize civilians. Like, it's just kind of...
that's. I mean, but then how am I going to do my job?
Yeah, exactly. You mean I can't beat people up? Then what the fuck? What if they have a gun?
That's what I joined for. You know what was something that was insane to me is I remember when Colorado legalized marijuana, and then that was one of the main complaints of the officers. They were saying this makes it difficult for us to do our job, and it's like. Your job is to uphold the law. So how could changing the law make it difficult for you to uphold the law? Like, what are you talking about? But it just exposes, like, oh, okay, so yeah, because what they were really getting at was that they had been abusing the law by basically, they would always just use, hey, we smelled something, we smelled marijuana, and that allowed them to harass people further, to escalate situations, and so they would do that. They would get false positives from their dogs, which how could you possibly challenge that? There's literally no way you can. And so I mean, I just feel like a lot of times, they are playing the game. They're just
Yeah.
how can we escalate things and what can we do? And Tyreek Hill went ahead and decided to give them the ability to do that.
And to be honest with you, like there is some truth to say that if I hate this, I'm not trying to simp for cops, but I will say that if you have a situation where something is illegal for an incredible amount of time, and then that thing is finally illegal, it no longer points to that illegality. But there's a lot of evidence to suggest that weed pointing to illegality might point to other illegality. And even though it's just literally vibes, it's just like
I don't know.
Yeah,
I feel maybe it's like maybe, but I feel like I know too many people who smoke weed who aren't criminals. You know what I mean?
exactly.
So it's
all
like
do. They're just chilling. Like, and then
yeah, I feel like this is just like an anecdotal thing, but I remember this was like a shocker to me. I was a month or two ago, I was over in Amsterdam, and I was just like, let me do Amsterdam, let me do the thing, right? Let me get some mushrooms, let me chill the fuck out. So we're out here, and I was like with a squad of people, and the cops there it surprised the fuck out of me. It was like a culture shock because I noticed the whole time I was like, I asked one of my waiters at one point, I was like, yo, what's the crime rate like over here? It's like a third of America's per size. So like if you scale it down, it's a third. And they were like, yeah, we don't really have a lot of issues. Whatever. They've legalized, the women's sexuality stuff. They've legalized marijuana. They've legalized mushrooms. The cops are actually there. It seems like they're trying to help. And the craziest thing is like we were on the curb. We came out of a park. We were on this sidewalk. And I told some joke or something. And this one chick started laughing. She was like on her knees laughing, right? Like, because we clearly high as hell. Cop pulls up hard as fuck. Pulls up. It was like nighttime. He said, hey, he yelled at us. And we all looked over. And then he looked at us and pointed. He's like, are you guys okay? And we were like, we gave him a thumbs up. And he said, all right, just making sure. And he drove off. Swear to God. I was like, I was confused. I was like, you're not going to beat our ass? Like, you're not going to come check on us?
Mm-hmm.
But he was dead ass. The cops were dead ass there just to check on you, to make sure you were okay. It was like a whole different experience.
What you're describing is a homogenous culture in which, of course, they don't have like other people to otherize. So they're just sitting there and they're just looking at it like, nah, it's good. Mind your own business. It's racism in our cops. I'm telling you, white people don't understand. Like, I'll never forget the day someone broke it down to me, like why it is that we're having such an insane, difficult, like time trying to explain to people the nonsense that's involving these officers. And he explained that basically, anytime when white people interact with police officers, it's because they're like telling them, hey, somebody broke into my house or whatever the freak the situation is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like they call the police shows up and they're a hero and they're like, oh, don't trip, we got you. We'll get to the bottom of this. We'll fix this problem. We'll find the person. Like we're here to help you, right? Whereas for us, almost every time we're interacting with the police, it's because the police is kind of putting himself in there, and he's just like, hey, what are y'all? What are you up to? And they're like, they're questioning you. They're stopping you. They're asking, can they search your vehicle? Like so, it's more antagonistic, and that's the very very big difference. Is their default is antagonistic towards us. And they're not towards Anglos. So as a result of that, like we're constantly like having just a difference in our understanding of how we should be interacting. Now, when somebody gets privileged enough and feels like I can kind of get away with this, and you're gonna get that wake up call, and that's what happened to Tyreek. He got his wake up call, and he's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't, maybe I probably shouldn't have rolled my window down. I should have been a little bit more careful. You can't tell me if he was a young nigga in the hood that he would have rolled his window down. You just wouldn't. You would know better.
Let me see if I can like work off that and make sense to some kind of people in the chat kind of getting confused on what you're saying. But it's like realistically, if we break that down on why the cops are acting the way they are acting, a lot of that's gonna be like fraternal stuff or fraternity stuff, right? Because they're in a unit and the unit already has an established way of looking at things. But like we talked about earlier, you're gonna have white cops policing black neighborhoods. So if the only interaction you have with black people on a daily basis is them committing crimes and you being called to the scene to see black people committing crimes, you're probably gonna have a very specific way of looking at black people, right? Like you're gonna be on edge every time you're around them because they call me over to like West Side of Compton for one reason, and it's these niggas acting up again, bro. Like, so eventually you're gonna get to a situation where like most of the way you look at black people is gonna be like, you know, a little whatever. So I don't even think that's like it's that far fetched or it's propaganda or whatever. That's what I'm trying to say. I feel like this sounds like legit how cops generally look at minorities.
And there were really people in the chat that didn't understand that, you think?
Well, I was reading one guy's shit while you were speaking. So yeah, I ain't gonna call him out, but yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, like the fact of the
Toby.
matter is that people want to so desperately make the context fit their rhetoric, and it's really funny in real time. People go like, "Well, what if he was white?" And it's like, okay, well, if he was a white player, if he was a white NFL football player at the same level of Tyreek Hill, which is saying that he's the top 5 in his profession, everybody would know who the fuck he is. That's the difference. Thanks for playing. Like you like, and then it's like, oh my god, it's Tyreek Hill. It's like, not who is this nigga? Get the fuck just like I'm so like I hate to break it to a lot of NFL fans. They don't know who the best players are unless they're white dudes. And then all of a sudden, like, then they know everything about them. Like everybody knows who the fuck Kevin Love is, despite the fact that Kevin Love is trash. Like, and that's a basketball example, but it's like, again, like if you can't pick Tyreek Hill and devoid him of all the context of him being in Miami in the first place. Like, he is a NFL athlete who is one of, if not, maybe I wouldn't say the best, but like definitely top 5 in his profession. So if he were to be white, you were saying that what would happen if the white top 5 athlete in his profession gets pulled over in a state that he is brand new to? They probably would have given that nigga the keys to the city the minute he got signed. Like, that would just be the meta of it. And there's so many examples to that. Like, you really think that the cops are going to handle Aaron Rodgers the way they handle Tyreek Hill if he gets pulled over in New York City? Hell nah. They know better. Like, there isn't somebody who's like, oh, like, it would literally be like, oh, I'm pulling over this guy. And then one of your officers goes, that's Aaron Rodgers. And they go, who the fuck's Aaron Rodgers? You're going to learn today, because there's going to be people in their life that are going to involve themselves in your problem that will confuse the shit out of you. Like, and that's what power is. Like, power is where Beyonce and Jay-Z can pressure Piers Morgan, freedom of speech, uncensored podcast, Piers Morgan, to redact portions of an interview that conflicts with their interests, that's slanderous to them. And for all of you who don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, that's what happened. Like, there was an interview with Piers Morgan, and the Bay and J did not find it savory, so their lawyers got involved. That's power. But not every single black person has even the power of notoriety. Like, you have to be at the level of Beyonce to be able to influence a podcast to redact an interview. And then use the lawyers for that. Like,
So
I feel like we probably,
because we're starting to get over time, I don't want to hold everybody up. So if we want to get closing statements on this one, and I'll allow everybody to get an outro if they need to dip, because I will do an open panel afterwards.
I mean, I feel like we beat the hell out of that thing. I feel I feel okay. Yeah.
I'm down with chilling if unless you guys have a hard out.
No,
Every black man need to massage their spider sense, right? Their ability to what would you call it, fanatic?
Yeah, the sense, officer sense at all.
Yeah. So
I like the idea of spider sense. I don't want to hear anyone saying nothing about pineal glands. I'm be pissed.
yeah, I'm done with the pineal glands.
I mean, ours aren't calcified though. Not kidding.
Yeah, for sure though. Yeah, great conversation though, man.
Hey, actually, what was really interesting, I want to point out when we did the when I was doing that panel on the school shooting, I was trolling that panel. I'm just gonna keep it a buck. And in that panel, I remember there was a point where I mentioned it. I mentioned like calcified pineal glands, and I was like, because we were like, I was saying that well, there's something that's causing these shootings, and we don't know what it is, but it seems like whenever we want to deal with whatever those things are, we run into different issues. We can't like accurately call it what it is, but we want to make all the excuses. So, the people want to say things like, yeah, man, maybe it's the difficulty and not having a father figure in the home and did all these, whatever the excuses they were making. And I was saying, and they were trying to equalize it. And I was saying that there was a difference between the wanton white rage that like feels fun, like that does these school shootings versus, the typical whatever. And I brought that up as maybe that might be the cause. Maybe it's these calcified, and that dude went clean off. It was Fabian. I think his name is Fabian at Liberty.
Oh, you went after Scott. That's funny as fuck.
Scott.
Yeah,
That poor
nigga
bastard.
lost it, bro, and it made my freaking day. You have no idea. I was beyond excited. I had a very good time trolling that one.
Well, then they talk about like all the like the way of pathologizing this way is wrong, and then you just like then you want to hit him with the okie doke. It's like, oh, so we shouldn't do that for black people, right?
Yeah, but he can't help
Well,
it.
no, actually, it's like
Yeah, because that was his thing. It was like, oh, well, black people shoot at schools too, and I'm like, yeah, but there's a difference, in the sense that black people, when they're shooting at a school, it's an altercation between individuals in which
External from
maybe
the
it's gotten
community.
violent, right? And it's like, oh, I'm getting violent with this individual, so I'm shooting at this individual. It's not the the random white rage that just tends to just be like, I'm mad and I'm shooting everybody. I don't know why they can't just kill who they mad at. You know what I mean? Why do they do that?
well, like that's the problem with like the gun safety thing, right? Where one of the things that frustrates me about those conversations is
Y'all
that
can't just let me be talking like this though. Somebody better correct me. What's going on?
I'm not gonna like I'm not co-signing what you're saying, but I will say that right when it comes to the relationship that communities have with guns, it's very very clear that there's a difference between the way that white Americans handle guns in the same age cohort than black Americans. That just kind of goes without saying. Now, and there's a bunch of reasons I think for that. And those reasons maybe at some point we can have like a deeper conversation about. But at the end of the day, like black kids are not shooting up schools.
Nope.
And if they are victims of gun violence, usually those are isolated and rare, incredibly rare. But what you do find is that black Americans have a what's the word? Proclivity of being gun violence victims external from the educational environment. Where like if they are involved in what's considered a school shooting, that school shooting usually is external from the actual like four walls of a classroom. Like you'll see shootings at football fields, you'll see shootings at athletic complexes. They count as school shootings by definition, but it doesn't cleanly like elicit what the problem actually is for those individuals. Where like, and I think it was Kyle that brought up he was from Newark, or Josh, excuse me. Like schools in Newark are basically in the middle of Newark. Like it's just you are within the Newark community, you're within the urban center that is of Newark. And I can't speak completely for Chicago, but MA7, like you bring up the same thing where it's like I've seen how schools are structured in Chicago, and most of the time it's within the sort of like community of Chicago. It's not like this sort of separate facility that's far away from the urban center, that's far away from like sort of like city fuckery. It's like in the city. So it's like, oh, cool, a school in Chicago got blasted. And then like you look at the story and it's like it got blasted by a stray bullet hundreds of yards away due to an incident on another side. It's like then you start piecing together and it's like, okay, this is categorically a school shooting because the bullet hit the school, but it didn't hit the school because the school was the target of the violence. But then you'll get liberals who be like, well, that's why we have to have better security in schools.
And now you're talking about the liberals. Hey, Joe, this is closing statements, bro.
Oh no, we're just in open now at this point. But
Yeah.
just
I was
chill.
gonna say,
Well,
for the open, do you allow people from your chat to come in? Because I feel
Anybody
like there's
can
a
come
few
in.
people. Oh, they can. I mean, serious Black Wizard. Would you like to come? Join in this conversation? I feel like you have a lot to add. It seems like you think you do. So I would like to have that conversation with you, buddy.
So yeah, I do got to bounce though, gentlemen. It's been a blast, absolutely.
I'm glad we finally
again,
we finally met. You
Oh
are a
yeah,
great addition
yeah,
to
it
the
was
panels
dude.
like this.
Oh yeah, no
For
doubt.
sure, man. You got me. We locked in right now, brother. And whenever you need me again, I will definitely answer the call for sure, for sure. But just
Yeah,
want to,
man.
I didn't eat anything all day. I just got back and I'm super duper tired. But yeah, so again, I'm higher thinking of the Chicago Black Delegation podcast. You can find us on YouTube, and we doing the best we can to contribute to the development and the upward trajectory of Black Americans. So, Fanatic is again, it's good seeing you again, gentlemen. It's good to meet you guys for the first time. I'll catch y'all on the flip side.
All right, man.
Yeah, be safe, man.
Peace, my dude. Thanks for coming through.
Very well spoken.
It is amazing. Like first time meeting him, he was
He did that on
recommended.
purpose. Ain't no way.
He was recommended by someone I trust pretty greatly in this space, and did not disappoint one bit. Dude was amazing.
Yeah,
Well, I
he's one of
think-
my favorites.
Yeah, I appreciate the evolution of. Listen, I've been doing these conversations for a long goddamn time, and I appreciate that now. It's beyond that blood sports bullshit that was really pervasive for a long time.
No, it's
Because
still
I-
there. It's just
oh yeah,
leafy.
yeah, for sure.
Leafy's chill.
Yeah, no, bro. Yeah, okay. You know how long I've been doing these spaces, bro. You know, it's
Oh,
around
yeah.
the same time, and literally, I have my brother inside. You know him, the Wesker player from NBC3, IGT inside. That dude, he was sitting there and he came into my chat for the first time today, and I told him, I was like, oh no, because he knows how much I hate panels. And it didn't matter if I hate them or not. Even if this was a bad panel, I would come on there just to support Lethe. But it's not. And I was like, oh, and he was like, oh my God, you're doing a panel, because I've quit panels so many times. And he was just like, I was like, oh no, this one's gonna be different. And he's like, why is this one gonna be different? And I'm like, well, I can't be 100% sure, but I just know Lethe typically, has better people in there, and it's not the same environment. And so I knew that it was gonna be good. 4 years now, years, plural, 3, about 3 years now. He joins my stream, and he's like, yeah, whenever you do these panels, like I come in and immediately the first thing that someone says is retarded. Like 9 times out of 10, the first words out of someone's mouth is going to be retarded. He subbed today, and I didn't even have my chat up, and his message was, it took this long for someone not to say something retarded, something to that effect. And I was like, oh yeah, I told you this one would be different. This was an actual conversation without retards, right? And so it's just different. But that doesn't mean that that's not that the culture is changing. It's just this specific thing. If you remember my panel, it was also that way. I don't allow retards. You're not going to be retarded and in here talking over people, just saying stupid stuff. I don't put up with that nonsense, because I actually want a genuine conversation. But when in Rome,
Nah, I feel like it's crazy because when I think of how you communicate even currently, I was in one other panel with you. Who was it?
Last week.
Prime.
Last week.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
Prime.
yeah,
I was in that one other panel, and it was just like the way you communicated was like I was like, oh, this seems like you're very used to, or you're very much okay with the conflict. But it's crazy. So I can definitely tell you came from that type of era. But the way your brain works, like the hardware you got is a little insane, because the fact that you can come up with information that quickly, or retrieve information that quickly, is not something I want to be a part of. So I'm I like the conversation like this, the debate.
Yeah, well,
If
what
I have the
happens
information in front of me,
is-
maybe.
Yeah.
What's up, Joe?
Well, I was saying what happens is, I'm just speaking from experience here, where there's sort of subtle expectations of the conversation and expectations of guests. Like I'm like a frequent of Dylan's hippy dippy. I'm like, even to this day, by virtue of people being irresponsible, I just end up on there for no reason. Like the panel I was on, like I wasn't even supposed to be on the main show, and Not So Erudite dipped in the, like, she called out last minute, which is crazy to me as a panel guest. And really irresponsible. I hope she never gets invited to things ever again, is that she thinks that that's tolerable behavior. That being said, like
That's
I was the only
homie,
one.
yo.
I was the only one that was available. So it was
That's
just
valid.
like, it was just like, okay, I guess I'm going in to fill the space because this person did not decide to come in. And what's so interesting to me is that, like, I knew going into that, like, okay, I'm not the intended person to be in this conversation. So I have to be very mindful of my pushback and generally shut the fuck up, because I'm not supposed to be the villain of this panel. And I think what people do in a lot of cases is they will say X, Y, and Z, and don't be caping for Kyla. Like, chat, don't be caping for Kyla. What you did was some fuckery. We can recognize that, hey, if you had all this time to say you can't make it, you can let somebody know as a person who's responsible for handling all these niggas on a panel to let them know long before 30 minutes from the hit. That's
Wait,
your
what was the
responsibility.
panel about? Or was she in it,
It
or
wa-
was she
This hit
directing
Yeah,
it?
she was invited as a main guest. Like, but yeah, like my whole thing on that, like then I get back to the main point is that like, look, like these panels have so much fuckery involved, and what some people want to do is that like they think like, oh, it's my time to shine, and I have to be openly confrontational in this panel, and I have to be the heel, and by being the heel, it brings the content. And sometimes like certain conversations don't require being verbose or being openly flamboyant and confrontational. Sometimes like it's okay to have a conversation and everybody's just chilling. And Fanatic's seen this, like we've all seen this, where like you'll just be having a normal conversation and then someone comes in and goes like, well, Fanatic, do you think that like white people should just like, like just be exterminated or something? And you're just like, what the fuck?
Like, how is that even a question? But see, this is the thing. This is the
Yeah.
difference here, like legitimately. And I think, because I don't think anybody here is having a conversation just to have a conversation. Like I don't feel like anyone's being a contrarian just to be a contrarian, right? Like it's like, hey, we're just having a conversation about what we believe. And I think some people feel the need to be a contrarian just because they want engagement. And so when that happens, man, it just makes me. I just not I don't even really want to be there. It just annoys the freak out of me. And so it's like in this situation, yeah, like we're just talking about.
Oh,
Did you do it again?
Oh,
Oh no, you did
bro,
it
move
again.
too much, Doug.
The whole thing just froze out.
it was the camera and mic. Oh Lord, have
Got
mercy.
both. And I wanted to ask him about something because we did a panel last week and we were talking about black conservatives. Oh, he's catching up. Cool.
So the video's working
Can't
out,
quite
but your
hear you
mic
yet.
isn't.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, there
Now
you
we
go.
can.
All right. So yeah, there was that conversation. There was a panel, and it had like Lauren Southern and a bunch of other people, not so erudite, Destiny, and just a bunch of niggas. And I remember like Lauren Southern came in there and immediately was like, wait, where's the conflict? Where do we all disagree? And I was like, hey, we don't have to all disagree in order for it to be an interesting conversation. And she's like, well, like, but how do we have, and like immediately like she was just like chimping out because she just couldn't handle the idea that, hey, we don't all have to disagree in order for this to be a good conversation. Like in her brain, without the disagreement, it was going to be boring, right? And I can understand that to some degree, right? Because even to my boy, like I told him, yeah, you're probably not going to hear anything retarded, but it's not going to be entertaining. Well, it'll be entertaining for intelligent people. It just won't be entertaining for everyone else. And I want that. I want the and you know I want to be able to just have a genuine conversation with real niggas, and but then you got people like Bam who's just like, nah, I just want to be a contrarian. 'Cause I just want to say something.
I mean, I'm like,
Well, I
think
can't
there's
go
a
there
time-
No, bro, how'd you slide that nigga like that, bro?
No,
Bro, was sleeping.
that went on for like 2-3 more days where they were still
Nah, bro.
arguing in the side chat.
Bam is in his
Yeah.
room sleeping right now. Bro's just stuck him in his face.
Nah, for sure. He had to
And
get
there's
hit
a-
with that one.
And there's a time and place to it too, right? Where it's like one of the things that was in the discourse of Tyreek Hill, because when I say FBAs, I mean like the Twitter FBAs, like the investigatory FBAs, where they're just like, well, look at his wife, like of course he does that stupid shit, and it's like, hold on, what? and then like you look and it's like Keita Hill, she's just a biracial black woman, but then like when you investigate what they're saying, like, oh, they think she's a white woman. and then it's like, and then you'll get into those like toxic conversations about how like black male
Umarian
fuckery
conversation.
was that?
The Umarian conversation.
Yeah, where it's like black male fuckery is directly tied to interracial dating. And listen, I've been in those Twitter spaces; they're hilarious. But nobody wants to have that conversation outside of a Twitter space because you're not going to find the people who are that like those controversial niggas who's like do like Umarian quotes. They're not the ones that are going to end up on panels. Like they don't even
Right.
show their faces. Like
Right.
so.
They know better.
Yeah, they know better. Like they know they have their conversation about Akita Hill is not a black woman. She's just a tether. Like they're fine. Just let them be. Like you don't have to have like that toxic
No, it's good to know.
conversation all the time.
I'm always on the outside of this shit, so like I personally didn't know this. So like when I never really watched Twitch, and it was like normally when I would do things, my thing with content creators is usually I would put them on to the job, my day job, right? That's my connection with content creators. It was never like I was a content creator. So when I came into these spaces, I was assuming I was gonna run into some fucking, I guess Umarian's a great word to use, like type niggas. Like I thought that was gonna be like stand. I was like, oh, here we go. We gotta talk about why Childish Gambino is not actually like for black people because he married a white woman or some stupid shit like that.
I call them homosexuals. They're really funny people.
Homosexual.
The homosexuals are hilarious.
I like it.
Oh, that's hilarious.
That's a good. You were spitting with that one.
So fanatic.
Well, but again, like, and then low key, where it's like I come in there and go, "Hey, guys, if you told me Keita Hill was black, I would believe you. But at the same time, if you said that she was a white woman, I would also believe you. And we should interrogate what that means." And then all of a sudden, like, no one wants to have that conversation. I'm like,
yeah.
So about a year ago, you had a conversation with a dude that goes by LFR Family.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I watched that conversation and I immediately was like, this person is not equipped to have conversations like this. And it gave me a flashback to the panel that we had last week about Black conservatives. And the very next day, my aunt sent me a video from this dude talking about the debate and how Waltz got smoked by JD Vance and the whole deal. And she's like, well, I know you have beef with this dude. I'm like, I don't have beef with him. I just don't think I can learn anything from this dude. Right. And I went back and watched that video of your conversation with him, and it all came flooding back to where this dude was making all these terrible points about oh geez, there was so many of them.
They were all
Black
they were
accountability.
all pretty
yeah. So like, I don't believe that dude was a grifter. I believe he was naive, or like he could be a grifter, but I believe.
He was a conservative who was doing the whole like black people with lack of accountability thing. Is that what his whole thing was?
And he also said he voted for Biden. So it's like he's sitting there caping for Trump in his videos, but said he voted for Biden.
Bro, it's always middle class black people who live around white people who say some shit like that. Like, man, I'm responsible for my actions, and I'm like, all right, nigga, you could tap dance some more, but realistically, this is not the actual issue.
And look,
yeah, bro,
like,
it kills me.
We're in toxic hours, so we're gonna do some toxic
My
takes.
bad.
So it's like, and they always have white wives. It's like,
bro, no, I'm not even kidding.
It's not pandemic levels. It's not pandemic.
We're not allowed to say it though, bro.
but then it's like I can't unsee it. Where it's like I look at Tim Scott, and then it's like, oh yeah, Tim Scott's such a powerful example to the black community. He's pro black excellence, supportive of the black family, and that's like. I don't care that his ex-partner is white, but I think it's really funny because a lot of them have white wives. And it's like, I look at that and I'm able just to laugh and go, that's a weird occurrence, but I understand why, if you're moving up in the Republican spaces, well, I think it's hard. I would say it's probably harder as a Republican to marry a black woman. I think that's harder than it is to be like a Democrat and marrying a black woman.
I mean, it's like, oh, go ahead, my bad.
Yeah, no, just saying. Like, I think it's just very the pickings are very few and far between. Unless you're in a church, then everybody's hiding their power levels. But
nah, someone said that shit. Well, it was like a Kanye song or something. He was like, the higher I go, the less blacks I see, or some shit like that. But it's true though. It's like, I mean, we already know that 16% of the population is black in America. 16%, and a lot of those are concentrations in like Georgia, North, or Jersey, things like that. So when you look at like, if you're living in certain areas and you keep going up financially, I mean, the disparity is gonna be there. You're not gonna see a lot of black people around you, just to be honest. Mm-hmm. So you're gonna date whatever's around, most likely.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with that. I think it's just whatever. I just think it's a very funny occurrence where it's like you look at the NFL draft and it's like all these black quarterbacks behind their white girlfriends, and then it's like, and the few of them where it's like they don't have a white girlfriend or a white partner. It's like, okay, that's cool. Like, I do think it's fine, but it's funny how economics and racial disparities work like that. where it's like, yeah, if you are, to your point, like moving up the ladder of wealth and notoriety, you end up with a white wife. It's just,
Yeah, it's a sad.
there's too many black men, and like then you go, well, and that's not always the case. And it's like no one's saying it's always the case. It's just a very high percent.
Yeah, but I do want to point out still though that even no matter what what income level or wealth level, that still the vast majority of black men are married to black women. Because I hate feeding into that toxic narrative that black men ain't checking for white women, and all that nonsense that those divester retards use to try to promote their nonsense. And so yeah, that's I just want to push back against. I want to establish that I'm not pushing back against anyone because I don't know that you were saying otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like shit. Like, you guys remember Mia Love? I'm doing a deep cut here.
Not by name.
So
Hey,
Mia
what
Love.
happened to Kanisha Taught You? I'm sorry, the ADD. What happened? She just disappeared, bro.
Yeah, she got banned from YouTube.
Dang.
Well, she got into. Why do I know this lore? This lore is so.
That's
funny.
what I was about to
So,
ask.
Yeah, I was
on
gonna
Twitter.
say, nigga, I'm
So
jealous.
on Twitter, she got into a fight with the Muslim community, and then they were just clowning her. And then this one girl said, like, basically, like, I may be this, but at least I'm not that. So this Muslim girl said, even though I'm not, what did she say? At least I don't look like handsome Squidward. So she responded and said, at least I don't look like a terrorist. And she took a 2-month vacation from that. And yeah, and then she I saw that, like, I knew that she was arguing with an FBA, and not FBA, she was arguing with there's a sect of like pro-nationalist Muslims, and they have really extreme takes, and they have, like, again, like, if you know, like, the Twitter iconography, you know what you're getting into. Like, that's why, like, if you see somebody with a profile, if you see a black woman and it says gender crit in their profile or GC, run in the opposite direction. You do not want that. Or, like, if you see like, black person American flag in bio, don't engage with them. They're just not.
Wait, is that Pace?
That means we're not from the same place.
Yeah, and they say there's a lot of, like, hashtag FBA, hashtag Freeman, and there's like 17 hashtags in their Twitter handle. And you're just like, I should not argue with this person.
Yep.
They're totally fine people, but just don't argue with them. Like, it's just not. I mean, dude, they're really cool. They're really funny. But
her content
sounds like Pace.
Man, it's so crazy because you know, like, I do debates, and very frequently it's like, okay, you need decent people to debate. I feel like that nigga, bro, I can't debate him. He's just, he's so different that I feel like it's not even worth it. Like, it's like I can't even make content out of this.
It's like I was watching a live or a thing the Fanatic was in. I'm trying to, like, just listen into spaces because I find them really interesting on Twitter, Twitter X. And there was this woman who came on, and she was talking about being skeptical of Democrats, and, like, she totally understands the skepticism of Democrats. I'm just listening, like, okay, no notes, it's totally fine. And then she started talking about how you should also be skeptical of Republicans because they're in the pocket with Jews. And she just kept going and going and going. And then what sucks is that, like, I don't think people understand how smooth these people argue sometimes. Where, like, you're used to being on, like, Twitch, and it's always, like, really bombastic and like rousy and like the whole hoopah. But then, like, when you go on the other apps like X, TikTok stuff, they're smooth as fuck.
Yeah.
They'll insert just and like, and they'll just insert some heinous shit, or they'll put some like a heinous dig in the middle of what they're saying that has nothing to do with the conversation, and then you're
Yeah.
just like, I can't let this go unchecked. But if I try to correct them, it's going to sound like I'm talking out of nowhere. So it's like, what do you do?
And they don't they don't really allow for a lot of interjections and stuff. So you're just kind of stuck letting it float, and they're gonna go
Yeah.
until they land their plane, and everyone wants to talk in speeches. So it's like, oh, okay, you're going on for 4 minutes, and I gotta, after you're done with the 4 minutes, remind everyone. By the way, you said X, and then it's like, but at this point now, it's like it seems like I'm just kind of rehashing something that was old, and it's just
Mhm.
it's awful. Spaces are really terrible. I think spaces are actually worse than panels, like than Twitch panels, legitimately.
Yeah.
And you can't even
Which is
see
crazy.
anyone. It makes it even worse.
100%.
But they
No, I
have the
mean,
ability to
deadass-
mass mute everyone. They have the like X.com has the ability to mass mute everyone so the moderator can say something, but Discord doesn't have that. It's crazy.
No, I definitely brought a pen and paper. I did this after the last panel. I was like, I'm not fucking this up again, bro. I've been just writing. Every time y'all
no.
start saying to him, I start writing it down. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna respond to that.
Yeah.
But-
What I've learned in my panel days is that like, especially now in like this revitalized like me going on these things, if something is good enough to keep the conversation going, you just let it slide. Like I've seen people like argue with what's that dude's name, Andrew Wilson, and he'll just passively slide that like women are whores or something about like babies and nurturing. I just learned that just like, okay, just let it go. There's no point in spending 40 minutes to try to like break down like, well, actually, what you said was really offensive to women and like moralizing it. It's like, yeah, like the dude's a monster. Like monsters say monstrous things.
I mean, if he's presenting it like it's a core belief, like he's saying it as like it's just a part of his argumentation to like his actual point, you're not going to be able to move that brick until you dismantle a lot of things above that. You know what I mean?
It's like
it's like his whole belief is built on it. So
yeah, it's like Hake from who's Jordan Peterson's producer, where like, and I know Fanatic has experience with him too, where it's like Hake unironically believes that black people have inferior brains, and that's just his position. But I know that like just to let it slide, he's gonna say some crazy shit about black people and brains, and you just can't engage.
wait, is this a black dude?
He's a white guy.
No, it's a white guy.
Yeah, and he'll say, and then like you'll get like the moralizing white person that's like, do you really believe that black people's brains are smaller? And he just goes, yes. He just looks at the camera and it's like, you can't argue it. You're like, there's no debating that. There's no arguing that. It's just
Hey,
Oh,
Fnac,
yeah.
cut.
All right, Tess. I'm like, as soon as I get out of this panel, I'm gonna go get another cord. So that's another perfect example of where it's like, yeah. So I'm supposed to debate that guy. I went on his show, and but it's a call-in show, so there's like constantly guests calling in that have questions and the like, and so I'm like in a point where it's like I'm doing my thing and answering as many questions as I can, but then other people want to get in, and so like half of the time I can't ever hammer him on any of the points because the other people keep coming in, and so then it was like, and he was like, oh, okay, but I'll come back, I'll come on your show, and I was like, all right, sure, we'll make this thing happen. And then I started realizing like, bro, again, this is another one of them situations where I feel like he's so absurd that I don't even think I can really make content out of it. You know what I mean? Like it just feels like almost like a waste. And I it's so hard to find people who are intelligent enough to debate that it doesn't seem like you're bullying. And regarding the Andrew Wilson thing, so we actually had a debate quite a while ago in which it was about consent. And during that debate, he basically indicated, like, I asked him if there's a woman, she's asleep at a bar by her, I mean, not sleep, she's drunk at a bar. You happen upon this woman, she's like blackout drunk already. You know what I mean? You can tell she's completely twisted. You go back to her place and have sex with her. Is that rape? And he's just like, no, I don't think so. And I was just like, bro, I can't even have this conversation. It was so ridiculous. But my thing is, I'm still trying to get to the meat of what consent is at the end of it. And I finally got to the point where I was like, yeah, this isn't worth uploading because all this is just going to end up making this dude look really, really terrible. And so I ended up just abandoning the argument. And I was like, yeah, we kind of don't got to talk no more, bro. Like, you on some nonsense. And so that was like the end of it. But like the I think the average internet person in that situation is just like, oh, I gotta upload this because I'm trying to get a dunk. What I want more than anything is to actually have conversations with intelligent people. But intelligent people don't want to talk. The intelligent people are more self-conscious and they think to themselves, I'm gonna make myself look bad. I probably shouldn't say I don't want to do it. And that's what I've just noticed, like time and time again, when you have like the more intelligent a person is, the less likely that they actually want to talk. So then you end up getting into a situation where 9 times out of 10, the people you talk to are retarded, and then people think, man, when are you going to get a person that's actually into, and
No,
it's not a choice.
That's a good observation, especially since when you look at right versus left wing things, the people who are usually the loudest are the ones that generally don't have a lot of good things or things that make sense to say, right? The left,
Yep.
the farthest left nigga or the farthest person on the right who's like a MAGA, they're saying dumb shit. And
Yep.
the opposite side always thinks that that's the standard belief of the whole party.
Yep.
When it's just like, oh, no, there's just the loud niggas. Like, it's different.
100%.
There's a debate about God, what is it? It's like white liberals versus black conservatives on Jubilee. And there's I think I don't even know what he does anymore. But basically Alec Gunter is on that. I don't know if you guys remember who that is.
Oh, I
But he is like
remember.
one of those like failed up Twitch streamers that realize that, oh, I can grow an audience on YouTube. So I'll just like go on YouTube and not be on Twitch anymore. Which again, I think is a smart play, but like he's basically a failed Twitch streamer. And he was on this, and that man was embarrassing. Like it was so bad. And the thing that like pains me so hard is you just in spaces generally, I think I'm going more and more to the position that like the strategies that people adopted that are from like the Destiny vein of individuals are not sustainable long term if you're trying to have like robust conversation. I think that he's the only person that's able to get away with that. Like he's the only person who's able to get away with being like sort of morphing in and out of being presenting to be knowledgeable on an issue, then saying something bombastic in the sake of the conversation. Where like, even then, I think it doesn't look great optically. But if you're somebody who's not him and you do those things, you just look more ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so
Can
many
you break that
people
down for me
adopt-
real quick? What do you mean exactly?
Like if you like the way that Fnatic talks when he's combative is totally different than the way that he's calm, and he knows this because he's a toxic
Right.
piece of shit.
Yes, I am. No denying it.
And it's fine. Like I know when, like, but I know like between like Fnatic and my relationship is that if he gets loud towards me, I have to be saying something ridiculous or something that's not entirely clear, and I know that walking into that. But then there's the side of where if you don't have that relationship with him, insofar as like you've talked to him in different conversations, and he gets loud and like he made it clear like he doesn't like mental degeneracy in conversations. So if he's getting loud at somebody, they're probably being mentally degenerate. I'm not gonna say the R word, but it's like that's kind of just what it is.
It is what it is.
So,
it's retardation. Just say it,
yeah,
bro.
yeah. One of these days, I'm trying to be reformed. I'm trying to retire the word,
respect
but. Like in the face of Alec Gunter, like there's a time and place to be bombastic. There's a time and place to be confrontational in conversations. But I think the Twitch panels and Twitch conversations tainted everybody's like radar for that. Of like there's a place to be bombastic and confrontational, and there's a place to just be a normal person. It's like the fighting game player who just like loves fighting games a little too much that prevents them from being able to chill in a hotel room. Those niggas are the worst. Where it's like, what do you guys want to do? It's like, oh, we just want to like vibe and we're just gonna chill and probably go to bed soon. You all want to get some games in? And it's like, no.
I know exactly what
They
you're talking
got
about.
to hit them buttons. They got to.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Okay.
and then the whole thing, and then like they're the ones who's clickety clacking at 3 a.m. and you're like, damn, nigga, I got my fucking top match in 3 hours, and you are still here.
Yep.
But yeah, it's like this essentially like the time and place for that. Like there's a time and place for everything. And sometimes if you're deeply embedded within a community or just the whatever the space is, you can lose sight of that. You can lose sight of like how to actually engage with people.
Now tell me this, because it seems like it's happened twice, and this isn't a problem. This is more of an observation. It's like it seems like you have a problem with Destiny's overall group because like you mentioned Erudite and you mentioned Destiny, and both times it's been like not in the best light. So what's that about?
Oh, nothing. I just think like Kylie did Danabo dirty. That's all. Like
Okay, that's valid.
I'm very much like I value people's time a lot. And something that panelists do, which has so much evidence to support the claim, is that they love to bail last minute. Like they love to have like personal problems that are going on and personal situations that are going on, and then not telling the people that they need to when they have a responsibility to be somewhere. And then what tends to happen is like, and again, like accidents happen, emergencies happen. That is what it is. But I'm big about like, hey, if you can't make something, find your own replacement. And if you can't find your own replacement, then you got to let that person know as soon as possible. And a lot of times what streamers love to do is that they are like, oh, I'm not really down for this panel, but there's no like profit incentive because they're not paying me to be there. So I can be a little loose with my attendance. And that shit just drives me nuts. Like if I'm gonna say I'm gonna be somewhere, I'm gonna be there. Even if like, and then if something isn't happening, if I can't be there, then I'm already seeking out and finding my own replacement. That was my poke when I was poking at Erudite on that. Because I just think that like panelists love that fuckery.
That's a professional way of looking at it. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah. That's pretty good. Because I wouldn't have thought to like I would have probably called Lee and told him I couldn't make it, but I don't think I would have looked for a replacement. So that's a good thing to take note of. And what's the thing going on with Destiny, or is that just like a side shit, like whatever?
I have found a way to not be in Destiny's crosshairs outside of a GoFundMe. So I'm doing pretty good. And I think that was just because he was arguing with FD Signifier. I think I was just stray. But
FD Sig is a little, I don't know, man. Here's the thing, like I feel like I have a good tolerance for like all the shit, and FD sometimes gets me on like the wrong foot. I'm like, I don't know if I fuck with this nigga at all sometimes.
Oh yeah, because he's
really
sometimes
Break it down. Can you explain why?
I have to go back and like look at some of these older videos, but it was like, and to be fair to him, last time I watched one of his videos seriously is like one of my friends was sending it to me. It was like a year and a half ago. So, but maybe he's changed. Maybe he's just developed. But
I'll say this because I'll tie it into the problem with Destiny. I understand Destiny's significance on a platform. I understand his influence as a creator. I think he knows that too. So I know that I am somebody who wants to be chilling most days. So I know that by being involved and having a more like broader critique on him, even if it's something justifiable, is going to lead to a target. So I just avoid it. So like I have very deep criticisms over his canvassing efforts. Like I just deeply disagree what's going on with PV as an example as well. But I just keep my mouth shut because they're just doing their thing. It's not my camp. So I'm just gonna let them do their fuckery and I'm gonna let them be. I think it's okay to let people that you disagree with just live in peace. But with FT Signifier, which is really frustrating, he found a way to insert himself in so many situations that I don't feel like he had the right or need to insert himself. Like it was so crazy to hear him critique debate bros and like the Destiny and Voshes of the world when he's not in that community at all. So like he's only looking at this as a passive observer. And again, like it's totally fine to be a passive observer and have a critique on that. I just thought that what his conclusions were generally incomplete, which also tainted a lot of like streamers talking. Like a bunch of streamers had sort of like a similar critique of that. But the part that I get frustrated about FT Signifier about is that like I think there was a way for him to use his leverage as a visible Black creator to help legitimize Black people broadly on the platform. And I think he failed to do that. But I also don't think that I don't think he's invested. I don't think he wants to be publicly invested. When I say publicly invested, I mean like in the online space of presentation, publicly invested in Black issues. I think it's a choice that he's making. Again, I don't agree with that choice exactly. I don't know like his methodology of why he comes to that conclusion, but a lot of times like his approach to the black issues in the current moment tend to be incomplete. And then like and also we got rubbed the really wrong way when he went to Hassan's and it was just like a little side vacation where like he didn't use like the platform of being at Hassan's in a way that like pushed forward conversations that Black people were having at lower levels than him.
So once he got to the position where he could have said something, he really didn't do much.
Yeah, like, and again, like it's a choice. Like it's a choice that you can make in those moments. And I'm not going to fault him for those choices, but I'm still critical of them. Where it's like,
So it's so crazy because I have such a different opinion of him, in the sense that, like, well, for one, he came onto my platform. We had a conversation. I did not want to debate him because he's not a debater, and I know that. And so it's like I'm not sucking myself, but I'm a particularly good debater. So it's like if we get into a debate, I think it would not be good, right? Because I'm good at that. So then it's like, okay, but I want to engage with the person, and I recognize, hey, he's choosing to come to my platform. He gets almost nothing from it, right? Like, I mean, I got like 6,000 subscribers on YouTube. That dude has like 100 something. You know what I mean? So more than that.
This is a million, yeah,
almost a million. So like, he was doing that for me, right? Like, and I don't know. And I asked him finally at the end, I was like, I don't know what would make you do that, but, it's not lost on me that you did it. And he was just like, well, yeah, I wanted to start making a concerted effort to start talking to regular niggas. And I was like, oh, that's really, really cool. Like, I think that's a very, very good thing to do. You don't want to completely lose context and whatever of everything. And so I feel like that was, I mean, I guess maybe it's selfish because I got the benefit of it, but he did the thing, right?
Yeah.
Furthermore, I think even like having a conversation about debate bro culture, I think you're well within your right to critique it because, I mean, you're just an observer of it, right? And I, again, I'm a debater, but he's not. And so then I think he'd be pretty keen on all of the very specific things that debate idiots do that would make him say, I don't want to be part of that, or I do, right? And so I think that gives him a perspective, just because, I mean, hell, he knows he's not good at it. Like Hassan. Hassan knows he's not good at debating. Hassan is not particularly intelligent, in my opinion. So he just avoids it. And I think it's a smart thing to do. If you know you can't do the thing, don't do the thing. And I think that he did that. My critiques of Destiny, go a little bit further. That's because, we've had our run-ins. And
that's actually how I found out about you, to be honest.
Yeah, is that so? How so?
I was crazy enough. Like, I think 2 years ago, I ran to Destiny at like some bar. Me, Kyla's husband, like a couple people. We all met like at that place.
Oh, don't say that.
Yeah, straight up. No, you're good. I'm not tripping. I'm not tripping, bro. I swear to God. But I met all of them, and they just kind of fucked with me a lot. And then, like, I didn't know they were gonna be there, and we just became friends. So then, Kyla's husband's the one that put me on with Lee and Prime, actually.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Lee?
Yeah, but you're good, dog. It's not even a big deal. Like, your opinion is cool.
Yeah.
Are you from Canada?
No, I'm actually I'm in Dallas right now. I'm in Texas.
Okay.
But they might be moving down here. Like, we're doing this whole thing. We might be doing a thing.
I understand, they already did.
Oh no, they moved. They're in Miami though with Destiny because he's down there. We're trying to get that nigga to leave because, like, what the fuck are you doing in Miami when you don't even go outside? You're an introvert. Stop it. Like, but no. Go ahead. You were saying your qualms and shit.
Yeah, I mean, just one, I am a debater, and I debated Destiny. And the very first debate we ever had, he just couldn't understand compound logic. It was mind-boggling to me. And at the time, I didn't have the word for it. I didn't know what it was. I just knew he was failing. It was just like, how is he not able to recognize the argument that I'm giving? And at first, I thought it was intentional. It was like, oh, he must be intentionally distorting
It's like
what
bad
I'm
faith.
saying, right? Because that's the only way he can come to this conclusion, and maybe he just doesn't want me to have this argument. I was truly, truly thunderstruck. Like I could not figure out what the freak was happening, and then later on, I finally discovered the ineptitude of most people to understand compound logic, and so then it was like, oh, that's what was happening. He literally couldn't. He just couldn't process that piece, and so I think but then when we started having more and more conversations, and I started realizing how intentionally bad faith he was, and how unwilling he was to engage in conversations, because I'm particularly rhetorically proficient. So whereas most people, he can kind of just talk around them to get them to fail the argument. He can't do that to me. And the final debate that we had, and I never uploaded that full debate, and I probably should have, where he had made a bunch of statements, and so I was like, okay, yeah, we're gonna address all of the statements that you've made. And so I went there, I had a list. You said this. Let me walk you back on this. Okay, fine, you're right about that. Da, 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 da. You said this. Let me walk you back on that. And he's like, okay. Da, da. And after we did each of those things, he was just like, what do you want me to say, bro? I don't really want to talk da, da, da. And I could tell. Whereas with all the morons and the retards, he will engage with those people for hours and hours and hours and hours on end. When I went at that nigga with receipts, and these are the statements you're saying, and I got the proof and the history and everything, because I'm obviously going to be more informed than he is when it comes to black topics.
Absolutely.
And then particularly with synthesis of information, it's really, it is a skill of mine when I'm talking to be able to pull in studies, to pull in all of the information relevant to the conversation, in order to make it so that at this point you can't just argue your feelings. I don't really get involved in feelings discussions very much. And so as I was doing it and he's getting destroyed, he just finally decided he didn't want to engage with me anymore. And so it was he was just really gross about that conversation. And so then when the Annalicia thing happened, and he did that, and he was just basically letting her get away with the nonsense, and then I got on there, absolutely destroyed her soul.
That's what it was. That might have been it. I was like, you weren't even when I heard about you, when your name came up, it wasn't him talking to you, it was you talking to somebody else. Maybe it was his mod, or it might have been Alicia. But you shit on somebody. I was like, oh, I like this.
I still don't think Abba got his black card back from that conversation. I think
for sure. No, that was disgusting. It's gone. It's irrevocably gone. But the fact that after that conversation, that nigga went behind and was just he was coping. His arguments weren't really valid. He's just making excuses. And I was like, wait, you're truly going to basically reaffirm her thought process, and he did with no problems. And so I was like, okay, yeah, nigga, you're problematic.
That conversation had me sick. I'm not gonna lie, but I'm glad she's gone, and I probably never will have to hear her
she was
voice
different,
again.
bro.
She was part of what's his name? She was part of Toth Space, and it's funny because I really like Toth, but damn, at least the problem.
Jeez, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I would say something maybe that I'm hearing, Fanatic, is that when faced with, we'll just call it handle conversation fuckery, confronting him with that nonsense is probably something he's not very perceptive to. Is that kind of the read that you got from him?
Yeah, but it wasn't on the panel. It was just one-on-one conversation.
Yeah. I feel
I'm saying in terms of you coming, not to cut you off, but it's you coming forth and saying hey, listen, we had this conversation. It was really gross to me, and in a lot of ways, it sounds like there's an expectation that you were expecting better from him. Is that a fair?
Of course. Yeah. 100%. That was my that was my never meet your heroes moment, because I used to respect him a lot. And then from that, those interactions, it was oh, this nigga's actually as retarded as all the people that I was thinking were just on panels and stuff. Yeah, he's that.
I feel and this might be a misrepresentation, because I've only met him the one time. I'm usually talking to Kyla and them. Those are my actual people, but he's kind of on the outside of that. But it's
Lord have mercy.
From the one time, you chilling, bro. It's cool. It's not a big deal. It's real shit.
I'm just for context, I'm people who know me and I guess the Lethy corner of the internet, Lethy, Wick, I guess that's it. I'm so doomer. I'm such a black pilled streamer at this point, where it's when I hear people I went canvassing with Destiny, I'm just ugh.
Nah, I ain't do all that.
You could have done on the weekend.
I had a friend who it was this little white kid. His name is Cole. He really likes Destiny. Like he makes Destiny seem like it's his father figure. Like Destiny is the father he needed in
For
his
a lot
eyes.
of niggas, he is. For a lot of niggas,
Yeah.
he is for sure.
Because this kid Cole just on his Discord talk. He's like, did you see the Destiny stream yesterday? Like that's how he comes into my Discord. And there was a day where Destiny invited my brother went with Cole. My little brother went with Cole to this canvassing thing Destiny was doing. And at the end of it, Destiny and them liked my brother and they're like, hey, you should come eat with us, right? My brother's like, I gotta go see my wife. I gotta go home. So he dipped out. But he's like, then Cole hit me up and was like, hey man, can you come with me? I gotta go meet Destiny. I was like, shit.
Oh my
So
God.
then I showed up and I didn't know who these people were, and I was like, oh shit. And then I saw Fnatic stream with him later, and that's how I found out who Fnatic was. But I mean, he seemed like he thought highly of you from what I remember. At least the sense of my kid. He was like, oh yeah, he's smart, but I guess that was like all he really said.
Here's
that
what I
sucks
will
dick,
say about
like-
Destiny. Like,
Oh, go ahead.
I'll say this. Destiny does a decent job at, even if you slight him, I have to be very careful when I say this. Even when you slight
Go
him,
ahead.
depending on the level of intensity of that slight is, he'll generally still have like a neutral or moderate opinion. Because I know he has deeper disagreements with Fnatic, but I've never heard him go on the kind of tirades that Vosh will go on when he dislikes someone. But again, like I gotta caveat that where like there are women in Destiny's life that have crossed him, and oh my goodness, the way that he talks about those women is crazy.
Yeah.
But
No, I feel like he's definitely like the impression I got of Fnatic in the first panel I had with him, where it was like he was rap, like he was kind of spitting, right? He was kind of freestyling going. And it felt like if you were to question something, he felt like it was a personal attack. That's what it seemed like. That's how I feel Destiny is generally, where it's like he gets ideologically locked in whatever he's saying, and it becomes a debate because he refuses to move from the stance he's in. And I feel like, especially when it comes to black issues, he doesn't understand everything. That's like the one thing I would argue with him.
oh yeah, no doubt.
Yeah,
That's why it's
and
like it doesn't
He
surprise
doesn't
me that
understand
like
anything.
Canvas,
Not everything.
yeah.
He don't understand anything. It's crazy.
And again, like he's not that far off from a lot of people where it's like, unless you have some level of community with black people, I'm talking genuine community.
yeah,
Like there's black people that have a stake in your life, you have a stake in their life, and like you recognize them as not only like people, but black people, you're gonna run into those like limitations. And if you're a streamer and your whole bit is to be like on political content, that's a whole section of the conversation that you're going to run into time and time again, and you're just going to look bad. Like, how are you supposed to talk about what's happening in Gaza and broadly in Israel and then the West Bank and Lebanon without having a discussion about the racial element about that? You can't colorblind your way through that discourse.
yeah.
Which Destiny, I would argue, tried, but he kind of like in those moments showed his ass a bit, and then it kind of fueled the socialists and the anarchists and the more far like the DSA types about like, wow, this guy's a demon, and it's
I
like,
feel
if
like
you
it's-
know, it's over.
No, but I feel like it's definitely like a weak spot for him. Like,
Yeah,
because every time I've seen him talk about race in America, like just black people in general, I think 2 or 3 times, and every time I come across like, or I come away feeling like he didn't understand the actual argument, or the person defending the arguments was like stupid. To be honest, I
mean,
hate to
that
say that
jazz
shit.
take he had was terrible. God damn, that take was bad. You know a Destiny take is bad when even the jazz community clowns on you. Like, it was so incredible to watch literally the whole sect of internet jazz raineth down upon an individual of like, hey, your take is not only ahistorical, but it's also super racist. And then like you had
What was
like,
the take? You remember?
it's probably still around.
I mean, don't worry. If it's like a long thing, don't worry about it.
Nah, it's fine. I could probably just search DestinyJazzX.com.
Oh God.
Blues. And maybe one of the soldiers has it. But God, it was bad.
At this point, everybody's
Uh,
linked up, so like if you need a DM to them or whichever the case may be, you can probably get a hold of them.
Yeah, Minter, when you were saying that you were linking people in social media, what did that mean? What do you do exactly?
Oh, so my day job is I work for Viz Media, which is like a manga company, manga anime company. So we do like Bleach. We do fucking right now we're doing Don to Don stuff. That's kind of my job is like influence. Like I'm pretty much influencer relations. So my whole thing is like I do community engagement. So I have all the socials on my
Gotcha.
phone for Shonen Jump, for Viz, and then like I use my main thing is like at one point I linked up RDC with them so we could do some content with them. Whoever the fuck King Vader. To be honest, and I can always say this in this space, I feel comfortable saying that, but I definitely reach out to a lot of black people. Just kind of trying to get their shit to grow, you know what I mean? And then somehow we still get blasted for being like anti-black. Like one nigga will go on the internet and be like, I didn't get paid a lot for this gig, and I saw this white person get paid this much, and all of a sudden my whole comment section is just, yo, Viz, how about you pay your black content creators? It gets crazy. That's why I'm like, in my head, I've always got to look at everything from the lens because I get blasted, bro. So I got to look at everything from the lens. I'm like, is this racist? Like, I want to say it is, but maybe. That's why we might have a lot of differences in opinion, Fanatic. It's like, I see where you come from because I kind of generally agree, but I always have to give some kind of pushback just to qualify everything.
Sure, but I think that's where look, I'm not in the business of just saying everything is racist at all times and so on and so forth. Anytime if I'm saying something that's problematic, there's a study or there's something to back it up because I genuinely don't operate in opinions. It's just not how I function. Which is why I think even when it came to like that Annalisa conversation where it's like, I'm not going to just go back and forth with you about how you feel. I'm going to give you study. This study says this. This study says it's about educational outcomes, right? Like I'm not going to like have an opinion because I don't care for people's opinions. I don't care for my own. I want to know what's factual, and then at that point, then we can discuss whatever the freak. And I think, So I if you're one who is open to studies and facts, I don't think we would run into very many disagreements because I just don't go off of opinion. I don't have a lot of opinions about most things.
No, I liked our first interaction. I mean, it was crazy. I was like, a part of me was like not speaking. I was like, okay, this is my first time, and you were railing into Bam so hard. I was like, nigga, I'm not trying to catch any of that shit.
Yeah, bro. Man, Bam just pisses me off, bro. I just hate that nigga. I love him though. Like he's one of them things. Whenever I was doing my panels, I always invited him. He was like one of the regulars. And I just started feeling like, man, he's not being genuine. And I nothing makes me more frustrated than a person who isn't being honest. And so then it started going downhill because it was like, bro, like he will argue to argue. He just likes to have the conversation, which is fine. I used to do that a lot too back in the day. So it's just, but that's his thing. So then it's like, man, when we're trying to have a genuine conversation, you don't have to do that. Like you could just be real, just speak your actual mind. But he won't. He'll. And so my primary style of debate is to argue with you on things that I know are factual and I know that you'll agree to, and force you into a point where you have to concede based off of these are all things that we agreed on, and it follows deductively from this that this is whatever. Whereas Bam will genuinely, because he recognizes what I'm doing and where it's going and doesn't feel comfortable with the idea of like, dang, this nigga, he does have a valid point. He'll just go ahead and say, no, I disagree with that. And just dismiss.
Oh, and not. Yeah,
because he knows like, oh well, if I admit this, then that means I have to admit that, and he'll just go ahead and just say, no, I don't. Then I disagree with this point. I think the last time where it happened, it was pretty obvious. We were discussing. It was about the idea that Vivica Fox, if you remember, she recently was like, yo, I'm ready to settle down and find me somebody and all that stuff, right? And so people were like, I mean, look, you dated the bad boys and all that stuff in your younger years, and now you want to settle down for the good guy after you've been ran through by the bad boys, right? And so he was trying to push back against it, and they were like 50 Cent. He was like, I don't think 50 Cent was a bad dude. He was just, the standard wealthy person at that time. And so then we asked the question, if it was your daughter and she was, and this is back in that time, and you have an 18-year-old or 20-year-old daughter, and she wants to date 50 Cent, would you think that was going to be a positive, like, would you want your daughter dating? And he's like, I don't know that I would have a problem with that. And it's like, nigga, I know you're lying. I know you're not telling the truth, but you have to admit, if you say, no, I would not want my daughter dating him, then you can understand why we're saying that was the bad boy that Vivica Fox was running around with in her younger years, and now that she's 60 and is like, nah, I want me a good guy. And it's like, nah, freak out of here. but he won't bite that bullet. Instead, he'll just lie. So then it's like, I'm not going to engage with you, because if I have to argue with you about the things that I know you know better, and you're just going to be disingenuous, I can never prove the point, because you just won't concede, even if it means you have to lie. So it's just, I don't want to engage with them.
And that's how
I
we
found the
got into
quote.
the George Floyd thing.
Yep.
Oh yeah, yep.
I found the quote.
Oh, go ahead.
Damn, this tweet sucks. So they were having an argument about the appropriation of European music, and the conversation came about blues, and a person gently said, just some random account just said, appropriated does not mean influenced by or derived from. Mild perspective. And then Destiny replied with, no, early blues was not influenced by or derived from. It was 99% copied from European classical music, which is
What?
just wrong.
Now hold on. Are you sure?
Wait.
Are you sure? Do you I didn't
I'll
see
put it in
that,
chat.
dog.
I'll put it
He
in
didn't
chat.
say that.
Yes, he
I-
did.
I believe
Yes,
he
he
said
did.
it.
You don't remember
don't
this
believe
last point?
Oh,
Like
no.
Adam
believe
Neely
that.
responded. Adam Neely responded. John Baptiste called him embarrassing. Patrick Bartley responded. Like basically all of the internet jazz musicians, all hive-minded on like, who the fuck?
Ain't no way.
It's
Oh,
got to
they
be an
started
edit.
getting
Someone had to have
tagged.
edited that
Nah,
shit.
for
There's
sure they
no-
did. Nah, for sure they did.
There ain't no way.
Yeah, like it was bad.
That's crazy.
It was.
That sounds so made up. I don't know. I don't believe that. There's no
mean,
way.
Do you think he's still
and then
stand
people
by
were
that
saying
take?
like, yeah,
Ain't no way. I mean, he
And-
went, bro. Remember the Rachel Cooper thing? Remember when that nigga said that the guy was trying to steal her dog, and so then that was like the actual incident, and the media just like kind of hid it. But yeah, he was going to go steal her dog, and so
Oh, man.
so then that's why she called the police and said she was being attacked because she was really feeling in danger. But like the media, no one covered that. Do y'all remember that?
I remember
Vaguely.
it.
Do you know
Central
you know who
Park.
Rachel Cooper is, right? Yeah, Central Park Karen. Do you remember that incident?
So vaguely. Like that was like a couple months ago. Yeah.
No.
Years ago, at this
no.
point,
That was when during the George Floyd thing, like around almost the same time as that. There was this dude who went to Central Park, and this woman, this Karen, decided, like she was gonna go ahead and call the police on him because he told her like, yo, you got to put your dog on a leash, and she was like she didn't want to put her dog on a leash. And so he was like, oh, okay, then yeah, I'll just go ahead and I'm gonna go ahead and offer your dog a treat. And so he's just like, here, boy, and he starts like trying to give the dog a treat. So then she's like, oh, I'm gonna call the police and tell them that I'm being attacked by a black man. And then she calls the police and says like I'm being attacked, and then like has the police come there. And of course he was not. He was recording the entire incident. There was no attack whatsoever. But she knew what she was doing, which is why she even threatened him. I'm gonna tell the police I'm being attacked by a black man, right? So she knew what she was freaking doing.
Yeah.
Destiny's response to that was, no, man, like she wasn't. Like what it really was is that, he was going to steal her dog. And so because he was afraid that she was going to steal her dog, that's why she did that. And he literally went with that take. That's his genuine grift. And bro, he just be lying. And he said that to defend City Bike Karen.
City bike stuff. Okay, yeah.
City Bike
yeah.
Karen was crazy too. She just yelled, and it was like,
With that's with the
dude
5
crying?
dudes, right?
I've had
Yeah.
to explain to people on that one that you don't just, go on the app and get a bike assigned to you and you go to that bike. You literally have to walk up and scan that bike, and there are people standing around this bike.
Yep.
And she literally walked into the midst of these people like, I'm taking this bike. I'm
Yep.
not going to say
Privileged.
she was not capable of getting this bike because that bike wasn't checked in, but all the same, that's like something you don't do. Like, why are you going to just go into this group of people and just be like, yeah, I don't care what you want, I'm just going to take this bike?
But I'm going to tell you, and this is where I disagreed with everybody. If I'm holding on to the thing, then it is occupied. And at that point, to jump past me or to reach past me to scan this thing that I'm holding on to is absolutely theft. We do this in the shop in grocery stores. Think about it right now. I put all of these objects into my cart that I intend to buy. Because I haven't purchased them, technically, I don't legally own those things. However, if someone reaches into my cart and takes those things out of my cart, guess what? That's theft. Because ultimately, you're taking the thing that I now have tacit ownership of. So in the same sense, if I have my hands on the freaking bike and you go and scan that freaking bike, you stole that thing from me. I had ownership of it, even if I haven't swiped it yet. And he had been using that bike for hours up to that point. Hours. And you reach past him and then say because you're pregnant that you just should have some sort of ownership of it. And it's gross.
Mm.
That's
Tacit
what actually
ownership.
happened.
That's interesting. I actually like that.
Yeah, that's pretty much a similar take that I had to it.
Tacit, T-A-C-I-T. How? What? Let me double check, make sure. That's
I
the right
initially
word.
was using an analogy of like the last box of cereal on the shelf, and I have my hands on that last box of cereal, and you come up and like, no, it's mine. Doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a
like I was
social
about to say,
contract.
because socially, exactly. I was about to say socially, I completely understand where you're coming from, but I was like, does it count as theft? That's what I was like. My brain was like
Legally,
wrapped around that idea.
look it up. In the state of California, to do that, to steal something from someone's cart is theft in the state of California.
It might be just the wrapped in. Let me see. I wonder if that's like that in Texas. Hold up.
So I think Fanatic and I had a pretty similar take on that one. But the Central Park Karen was just wild. Like, are you serious? Like, you know what you were doing when you
She
did
did.
that.
Yeah.
It was disgusting.
And that's why he got a show on Discovery and she lost her job.
Yeah.
And then,
Yo.
you
And
get all
then
the
she came back and
people-
tried to sue.
Yeah, and then you got all the people who say like crazy things like, well, but did she really need to lose her job over? They shouldn't go after people's employment. It's like, oh, bro.
I hated him for that because that nigga was on that nonsense too. Like, honestly, I'm good. Like she should. And it's like, yo, bro, like this isn't just about you. It's about all of us. And the fact that people weaponize these things. And how do we get people to recognize that you can't get away with this stuff unless you do that? How do we do that? How do we get to the point where people start recognizing, bro, we got to stop like weaponizing race? And then literally, that nigga could have died. He could have died. And I don't think I'm being hyperbolic. And instead, now you want to have a soft heart for this wench who weaponized your race and could have gotten you killed? Stop it.
Yeah.
That nigga lost points for me. I don't think he deserved that show.
It is kind of interesting when you bring it up like that. Like if you have a situation where someone in a business or any type of environment is like being racist and it's caught on film, and then people go and try to get that person fired. It's like when you really think about it, if that person doesn't get fired and they move up in the company, you're barring a lot of people who would have otherwise moved up in the company from ever doing that. So you are affecting other people's jobs, right?
Absolutely. And she was
that
involved
is-
in banking. You know what I mean? I believe it was either banking or maybe it might have been hedge fund stuff. It was in something in finance. I just can't remember what specifically. But it's just I even not just specifically her, but the message of, hey, you cannot do this thing and get away with it. I'm good with it. I need her to get that. She's gonna have to catch all of that.
Oh, man. Well, on that note, it is a good time to raid out, and I think I know who I'm raiding. It's going to be Fanatic.
Oh wow. Appreciate that, buddy.
Of course, my dude. Thank you for coming
playing,
through.
I'm playing Schlang the Spire. Y'all ever played that game?
What do you call it? Fuck.
Slay the Spire.
Yeah, Slay the Spire.
He said Schlang, but he's talking about Slay.
Oh,
Yeah.
slay the spider. I think it said slang the spider. I'm like,
He did say, hey.
I did.
oh my
He did not
God.
stutter. I just had to pause for a second on that, but yeah. What's your favorite class on that one? And he cut out again. Damn that cable. Thank you all for coming through. It's been a great night. I appreciate each and every last one of you. Catch me again next week. I'll be right back here. Same bat time, same bat channel. Peace.